Illinois is known for its sprawling cities, historic landmarks, and turbulent past. But hidden behind barbed wire and iron gates are prisons steeped in decades of tragedy and despair. Some of these prisons are no longer operational, yet they still harbor the lingering spirits of those who never left. Today, we venture inside 25 of Illinois' most haunted prisons, where former inmates reportedly wander the halls. Unseen hands touch the living, and the echoes of anguish refuse to fade. Alton Prison, located on the outskirts of Alton, Illinois, is a relic of the 19th century, standing as a silent witness to decades of human suffering, violence, and despair. Built in the early 1800s, the prison housed countless inmates, many of whom face harsh conditions, brutal treatment, and for some, the finality of execution. Over the years, it became infamous not only for its strict disciplinary measures, but also for violent riots that erupted in the narrow corridors, leaving a trail of blood and anguish. Though the prison has long been decommissioned and its walls left to crumble, the dark energy of its past continues to linger, and visitors report experiences that suggest Alton Prison is far from empty. The building seems to remember the suffering within its walls, manifesting in ways that defy explanation and chill those who dare to enter. One of the most commonly reported phenomena involves shadowy figures moving through the corridors. Paranormal investigators and casual visitors alike have seen the silhouettes of men in period prison attire, gliding silently along the hallways, sometimes vanishing into walls or around corners as observers approach. These shadows are often fleeting, catching the eye only briefly before dissolving into the darkness. Yet the sense of presence they leave behind is undeniable. Many describe the figures as carrying a weight of sorrow, moving with a deliberate but hauntingly lifeless quality. Some witnesses believe these specters are former inmates who suffered violent ends within the prison, condemned to wander the halls in eternal unrest. Chains rattling on empty floors is another hallmark of Alton Prison's eerie presence. Even in areas where no metal equipment remains, visitors often hear the unmistakable clanging and dragging of chains echoing through abandoned wings. One investigator recounted exploring a cell block late at night when a sudden clatter resounded from the floor above, despite knowing it was structurally impossible for anyone to be there. The sound reverberated along the walls, growing louder before fading abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. Many believe these noises are residual echoes of past punishment, the torment inflicted on inmates etched into the very architecture of the building. Disembodied screams are also frequently reported. Visitors walking the darkened corridors sometimes hear cries of pain, rage, or despair, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. One tour guide recalled leading a small group to the Old Death Row Wing when a scream pierced the still air, sending chills down every Rionia spine. There was no wind, no source of the sound, yet it resonated as though it had originated from within the walls themselves. These screams often appear in areas historically associated with executions or violent conflicts, leading many to speculate that the intense emotions of those who died here have left an enduring imprint on the building. Certain cells and corridors are said to carry an especially heavy presence. Visitors often describe the air growing thick and oppressive in specific locations, as if the walls themselves are absorbing centuries of suffering. Some report sudden headaches, nausea, or feelings of dread that intensify the longer they remain in these areas. Investigators using thermal imaging or electromagnetic field meters frequently detect unusual readings, with sudden cold spots or spikes appearing where no physical explanation exists. Many theorize that the concentrated emotional energy of the inmates, combined with the violence and fear that define daily life in Alton Prison, has left residual energy that can be perceived by the living. Visitors have also reported more personal and tactile experiences. Some claim to feel invisible hands brushing against their shoulders or arms, or the sensation of being gently but firmly guided along a hallway. Others have experienced objects moving slightly on their own, such as doors swinging open or closed, or rusted metal items shifting without apparent cause. These interactions, subtle but unmistakable, contribute to the sense that the prison is alive with unseen observers, watching and interacting with those who wander its halls. Paranormal teams have documented a wide range of anomalies within Alton Prison. Audio recordings capture indistinct whispers, cries, and footsteps on floors that are otherwise empty. Long exposure photography occasionally reveals shadowy forms, sometimes appear from barred cells or glide down stairwells. Thermal cameras frequently detect cold pockets and sudden temperature drops, often coinciding with areas historically associated with punishment or death. Experts suggest that the intense suffering and repeated trauma experienced by inmates may have created lasting spiritual imprints, which continue to manifest for those sensitive to such energy. Local lore has preserved Alton Prisona's dark reputation over generations. Residents tell stories of visitors feeling watched, hearing chains rattle in empty corridors, or witnessing figures that vanish when approached. These tales serve both as warnings and as reminders of the building's history, ensuring that the memory of the pain endured within its walls is never forgotten. Despite its grim reputation, the prison continues to attract adventurers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts. Many leave with vivid recollections of shadowy inmates, unexplained sounds, and the heavy weight of despair in certain cells. Alton Prison is more than a decaying structure of stone and iron. It is a repository of human suffering and unresolved energy. Those who step inside its halls are reminded that some places retain the echoes of the past, and that the anguish, fear, and violence of centuries can linger long after the final inmate has departed. Easton State Penitentiary in Joliet stands as a looming reminder of the past, its stone walls stretching over acres of land, blending the modern with remnants of a bygone era. Though portions of the prison have been modernized or sealed off, the old sections retain an eerie resonance that draws visitors and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Tales of ghostly prisoners, phantom footsteps, and inexplicable phenomena continue to emerge, giving the penitentiary a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in the region. Those who walk its corridors often report a heavy, oppressive atmosphere, where the weight of countless past lives seems to linger in the shadows. Visitors frequently describe seeing ghostly figures through barred windows in the sealed-off wings. The apparitions are often indistinct at first, dark silhouettes that seem to stare silently, sometimes with faces pale and hollow, sometimes featureless shadows. Witnesses report an unsettling sensation, as though the prisoners are aware of their presence, observing and silently judging. Some have claimed that these figures mirror movements, lifting their arms or turning their heads in unison with visitors, creating a disconcerting feeling of being followed or mimicked by something unseen. The hallways of Easton State Penitentiary are known for phantom footsteps that echo in the empty corridors. Even in areas that are closed to the public, footsteps seem to follow visitors, matching the pace of their own steps, or occasionally running ahead, as if someone unseen is pacing, chasing, or leading them deeper into the prison. The sound is often accompanied by an inexplicable drop in temperature, chills that sweep along the spine and make the air feel thick and heavy. Longtime tour guides report that these footsteps often occur near solitary confinement cells, where prisoners endured isolation for days or weeks on end. Muffled cries are another recurring phenomenon, often heard near the solitary confinement area. Visitors describe soft sobs, whispers, and occasional sharp screams that seem to come from the walls themselves. The sound are often disorienting, appearing louder and softer depending on the listener's position in the hall, sometimes echoing from a cell that seems inaccessible or sealed. Paranormal investigators have recorded these cries on audio equipment, capturing voices that cannot be attributed to any living person, further supporting local legends of restless spirits inhabiting the penitentiary. Investigators and sensitive visitors often report physical sensations that accompany these apparitions. Some feel sudden pressure on their shoulders or chest, as though an unseen hand is brushing against them or holding them in place. Others describe a sensation of being watched so intensely that they cannot focus on any single point, their movements feeling mirrored or anticipated by an invisible presence. One frequent account involved a visitor pausing in a hallway only to feel a phantom force gently pushing them forward, guiding them toward areas long abandoned. These subtle interactions reinforce the idea that the spirits within Easton State Penitentiary are not dormant but active, aware of those who wander its halls. The architecture of the prison itself seems to amplify its haunted qualities. Narrow corridors, heavy iron bars, and isolated cells create spaces where sound travels unpredictably, and shadows seem to cling to the corners. In sealed-off sections, peeling paint and crumbling stone combine with the natural acoustics, where even minor noise cease at drips of water, distant creaks, or shifting debris take on ominous character. Witnesses often report feeling compelled to keep moving through these areas, as though the building itself encourages them to leave before the unseen occupants become more assertive. Local legends tie these phenomena to the history of the penitentiary. Eastern State was once home to hundreds of prisoners, many of whom endured harsh treatment, extended periods in solitary confinement, and early death due to disease or violence. Over time, the cumulative suffering is said to have left an imprint on the building, a lingering energy that manifests as shadowy figures, disembodied voices, and physical sensations. Stories suggest that the spirits are tied to the cells they once occupied, replaying fragments of their lives in loops of observation, isolation, and unrest. Paranormal investigations frequently support these accounts. EMF readings often spike near solitary confinement cells or in long hallways, and thermal imaging sometimes captures sudden cold pockets or faint human-shaped heat signatures that appear and vanish. Audio recordings capture footsteps, murmurs, and cries that cannot be explained by environmental factors or human presence. One investigator reported standing near a sealed cell when faint breathing and the sound of chains dragging along the floor were recorded on equipment, though no living person was nearby. These encounters reinforce the penitentiary's reputation as a site of active supernatural energy. Even during daylight hours, subtle phenomena persist. Shadows sometimes shift in corners or along the walls, and faint noises echo through the corridors with no apparent source. Some visitors report a feeling of weight in the chest or the sensation that they are not alone, even in areas cleared for tours. These quiet signs hint that the penitentiary spirits are ever present, only becoming more pronounced when darkness, silence, or isolation sets in. Eastern State Penitentiary in Joliet is more than a historical prison. It is a place where memory, suffering, and lingering energy converge. Ghostly prisoners, phantom footsteps, muffled cries, and mirror movements combine to create an environment steeped in tension and supernatural presence. Visitors who walk its halls confront the weight of the past, where suffering and isolation are imprinted in stone, metal, and shadow. For those who leave, the memories linger the feeling that the penitentiary is watching, that the spirits remain, and that within its walls, the past is never truly gone. Stateville Penitentiary in Crest Hill, Illinois, stands as a looming testament to decades of incarceration, punishment, and human suffering. Built in the 1920s, the massive stone and brick structure has housed thousands of prisoners over the years, including those on death row. Its history is steeped in stories of violence, despair, and tragedy, and over time, Stateville has developed a reputation not just for the horrors of prison life, but for the paranormal activity that seems to linger in its dark corridors. Visitors and staff alike report encounters that defy explanation. Figures pacing cell blocks, sudden cold spots appearing in the heat of summer, and shadowy shapes vanishing into walls. Paranormal investigators have captured strange orbs of light moving through the prison, often near areas associated with former executions, making Stateville one of the most notoriously haunted locations in the region. Many witnesses describe seeing figures walking or pacing within the cell blocks. These apparitions often appear at night or in low-light conditions, their movements deliberate and slow. Some are described as prisoners still wearing the standard orange jumpsuits, their faces obscured by shadows, while others appear in old-fashioned prison garb, harking back to earlier decades of the penitentiary's operation. The figures often vanish when approached, sometimes disappearing into walls or fading into the darkness of empty cells. Staff members working late shifts have reported glimpses of these entities from the corner of their eyes. The sound of footsteps echoing down corridors that should otherwise be silent, and a sudden sensation of being watched. Cold spots are another hallmark of Stateville's haunted reputation. Even in the height of summer, witnesses report sudden, chilling pockets of air in specific areas of the prison. These cold zones often appear near solitary confinement cells, former death row sections, or older wings that predate the 1950s. Those who encounter these inexplicable drops in temperature frequently describe a sense of unease or dread, as if the air itself carries the weight of the suffering that occurred there. Paranormal teams using thermal cameras have documented these cold spots, often coinciding with other phenomena, such as moving orbs or shadowy figures. Shadowy shapes are frequently reported throughout the prison. Visitors describe forms that move along walls, corners, and stairwells, sometimes following them for short distances before vanishing entirely. These shadows are often humanoid in shape, but lack discernible features, giving them an unsettling, spectral quality. Some witnesses feel an almost tangible pressure as these shapes move nearby, a sensation that cannot be attributed to drafts or building vibrations. The combination of these visual and tactile experiences contributes to a pervasive atmosphere of unease, making even brief visits to certain sections of the prison deeply unnerving. Orbs of light are a common occurrence captured by paranormal teams. These small, glowing spheres appear to float through cells, hallways, and the stairwells connecting the penitentiary's multiple levels. They move in ways that suggest intelligence, often avoiding obstacles and changing direction suddenly. Some paranormal enthusiasts believe these orbs are a form of communication, a sign that the spirits trapped within Stateville are attempting to make their presence known. Others think they are echoes of intense emotional energy, lingering long after the individuals who generated it have passed away. The penitentiary's history provides context for the strange activity reported there. Over the decades, Stateville has housed some of the most violent and desperate criminals in Illinois. Death row was active for many years, and multiple executions took place within the facility's walls. Reports of suicides, riots, and fatal altercations are numerous, and the emotional intensity of these events is often cited by paranormal researchers as a source of lingering energy. Those who have spent time in the prison speak of a palpable heaviness, particularly in areas where prisoners endured the harshest treatment or faced imminent death. This weight seems to manifest in a variety of ways, from cold spots to apparitions, and contributes to the penitentiary's reputation as a place where the past refuses to stay buried. Visitors to Stateville often report auditory phenomena, footsteps echoing in empty corridors, disembodied voices calling out in cells, and unexplained slams of metal doors are all common experiences. Some claim to hear faint whispers, murmurs of conversations that never existed, or the sound of chains dragging along the floor. These sounds are often accompanied by visual phenomena, reinforcing the impression that the prison is alive with residual energy. Even security personnel who work night shifts have admitted to feeling an eerie presence, as if unseen observers follow their every movement. Paranormal investigations at Stateville Penitentiary have been ongoing for decades. Equipment ranging from thermal cameras to electromagnetic field detectors often records anomalies in specific areas, particularly near older wings and former death row cells. Investigators frequently capture orbs of light moving in unusual patterns, sometimes darting through hallways or hovering above empty cells. Audio devices often pick up faint, unexplainable sounds that seem to mimic human activity. These consistent reports from multiple independent teams suggest that Stateville is a hotspot for paranormal activity, one that continues to intrigue and terrify researchers and visitors alike. Stateville Penitentiary is more than just a historic prison. It is a repository of human suffering and the unexplained. Figures pacing cell blocks, cold spots appearing without warning, shadowy shapes disappearing into walls, and glowing orbs of light all point to a place where the past lingers in ways that cannot be fully understood. For those who enter its corridors, the experience is a confrontation with history, human emotion, and the paranormal. A chilling reminder that some walls hold more than bricks. They hold memories, anguish, and spirits that refuse to rest. Menard Correctional Center, located in Chester, Illinois, is one of the Stadia's most notorious prisons. Established in the late 19th century, the facility has a long and violent history, housing some of the most dangerous inmates in the region. Over decades of operation, the prison has witnessed countless fights, riots, and tragic deaths, leaving an indelible mark on its walls. Even after the passage of time, Menard is said to be haunted by the restless spirits of those who lived and died within its confines. Staff, visitors, and paranormal investigators alike report eerie phenomena that suggest the prison is far from empty and that the history of violence and despair continues to echo through its halls. One of the most frequently reported occurrences at Menard involves doors slamming on their own. Staff and visitors have described walking through hallways, only to hear heavy metal doors bang shut without warning, sometimes repeating the motion several times in succession. Guards recount moments when a door will swing open or close with no one nearby, accompanied by a sudden rush of cold air. In some cases, the doors appear to react to the presence of people in certain locations, as if unseen forces are aware of the living intruding in spaces that were once dominated by the imprisoned. Witnesses often feel a lingering sense of unease, as though the doors are signaling both a warning and a reminder of the prisoner's turbulent past. Chains rattling in empty corridors are another hallmark of Menard's haunting. Even in areas long abandoned or secured, staff report hearing the unmistakable sound of metal links clanging together. One officer described patrolling a deserted wing late at night when he heard a series of rattling chains echoing down the hall. He investigated every cell and hallway, finding no source for the noise. Paranormal enthusiasts interpret these sounds as residual energy from punishments or struggles within the prison, the metallic echoes of a history of confinement and conflict that refuse to remain silent. Whispers repeating prisoners' last words are also a common phenomenon. Visitors and staff have reported hearing faint, unintelligible murmurs that gradually form into recognizable phrases, confessions, cries, or the last words spoken before death. Despite the area being completely deserted, many believe these auditory experiences are imprints of extreme emotional energy, replaying moments of fear, guilt, or desperation from inmates who met violent or sudden ends. These whispers often carry a chilling realism, as if the voices themselves are aware of the living presence intruding on their space. Security cameras have occasionally captured ghostly activity as well. In the exercise yards and empty corridors, faint shapes appear and move with no visible source. These forms are often indistinct, half-transparent, and humanoid, sometimes walking slowly across the yards or lingering near the fences. One night, surveillance footage caught a figure pacing along the perimeter of the yard, pausing to look toward the camera, before slowly fading from view. Such recordings are often met with skepticism, yet the consistency of reports across decades of staff testimony has created a strong belief that Menard harbors a tangible spectral presence. The atmosphere within the prison can also change dramatically for those sensitive to it. Visitors often describe sudden drops in temperature, heavy, oppressive air in certain wings, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Some report feeling subtle touches or pressure on their shoulders or backs, sensations that vanish when they turn to investigate. These experiences combine with the visual and auditory phenomena to create an environment that is both immersive and deeply unsettling, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead feels thin and fragile. Paranormal investigators have documented multiple anomalies at Menard Correctional Center. Audio equipment often picks up unexplained noises, footsteps echoing through empty hallways, indistinct murmurs, and the clanging of chains that cannot be traced to a physical source. Thermal imaging frequently reveals pockets of cold air, especially near areas historically associated with violence or executions. Long exposure photography occasionally captures blurred shapes, suggesting movement of figures not visible to the naked eye. Experts suggest that the intense fear, anger, and despair concentrated within the prison over decades has left a lasting spiritual imprint, which manifests as both subtle and overt phenomena for those who enter its halls. Local lore reinforces Menard's haunted reputation. Stories of escaped inmates, violent riots, and tragic deaths are often intertwined with accounts of ghostly activity. Staff warn new employees of areas where doors slam without cause, chains rattle, or whispers can be heard repeating last words. Visitors are advised to exercise caution, especially in deserted wings or during night tours. These tales, passed down through generations of prison staff and residents, create a shared awareness that Menard is more than a correctional facility. It is a place where the energy of past lives lingers powerfully. Despite its ominous reputation, Menard Correctional Center continues to attract historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious visitors. Many leave with vivid memories of slamming doors, ghostly figures in exercise yards, rattling chains, and whispers that echo through empty hallways. Menard is more than a persona. It is a monument to lives defined by confinement and conflict, a place where the past refuses to fade, and where the restless energy of those who once lived within its walls continues to linger, watching, waiting, and reminding the living of the shadows that remain long after the gates have closed. Tams Correctional Center in Tams, Illinois, sits abandoned yet imposing, a structure concrete and steel that seems to exude its troubled history even from the outside. Closed in 2013, the prison once held some of the state's most dangerous inmates in prolonged solitary confinement. Though the facility no longer houses prisoners, its reputation as a site of intense paranormal activity has persisted, drawing researchers, curious explorers, and those fascinated by the supernatural. Reports of shadowy figures, pacing footsteps, and inexplicable phenomena have made Tams one of the most notorious haunted sites in the Midwest. Visitors often describe an oppressive energy that lingers in the hallways, particularly in the isolation wings where the weight of past suffering seems almost tangible. Central to Tam's reputation are the solitary confinement cells, long, narrow rooms where prisoners endure extreme isolation for weeks, months, or even years. Locals and former staff report that these cells appear to trap more than human memories. They trap energy. Former guards recount seeing figures in the shadows of the isolation blocks, often standing silently in corners or sitting motionless on the concrete floor, watching with unseen eyes. Many of these figures vanish when approached, leaving behind only a sudden chill or the feeling of unseen eyes still tracking movement. Note that this phenomenon is concentrated in the isolation wings, suggesting that the extreme conditions once endured here may have left a lasting imprint, a spiritual residue of trauma and confinement. Footsteps are among the most commonly reported manifestations at Tams. Visitors describe hearing soft, deliberate pacing along the hallways, often echoing unnaturally in the empty corridors. Sometimes the footsteps match the rhythm of a visitor's own steps, creating a sensation that they're being followed or mirrored by an unseen presence. Other times, the footsteps move independently, coming closer or retreating without apparent cause. Paranormal researchers using audio and motion sensing equipment frequently capture these sounds even when the area is empty, lending credence to reports of persistent, active spirits. Former guards have reported similar experiences during the prison's operation, noting that even when cells were empty, the sound of pacing or shifting within the walls could be heard. Shadowy figures are another hallmark of Tam's haunted reputation. Witnesses often describe humanoid shapes appearing along hallways, in doorways, or at the end of long, empty corridors. These figures are usually indistinct, dark silhouettes with no visible facial features, yet observers report a strong sense of intelligence and awareness behind them, as if the figures are actively observing intruders. Some accounts describe figures moving slowly toward visitors, only to vanish abruptly when directly confronted. In many cases, the energy associated with these apparitions is accompanied by sudden cold spots, a heavy atmosphere, or goosebumps that sweep across the skin. Equipment malfunctions are a recurring theme for paranormal investigators at Tams. EMF meters frequently spike without explanation, cameras fail or shut down, and digital audio recorders often capture distorted sounds that cannot be reproduced. Cameras fail or shut down, and digital audio recorders often capture distorted sounds that cannot be reproduced. These incidents are most pronounced in the isolation wings, reinforcing the notion that the spiritual energy is strongest in areas where prisoners endure prolonged suffering. Investigators report that even in daylight, the building seems to resist observation, with lights flickering, doors creaking, and devices failing as if the facility itself is alive with residual presence. With lights flickering, doors creaking, and devices failing, as if the facility itself is alive with residual presence. Some suggest that the intensity of the energy is tied to the extreme psychological and emotional distress once experienced by inmates in solitary, leaving behind an imprint that interacts with both the living and technological devices. Former guards and staff provide some of the most compelling anecdotal evidence. Many recount feelings of being watched, sudden drops in temperature, or the sensation of someone standing just behind them. In one account, a guard described walking down a hallway. We felt a presence mirroring his steps. Each movement he made was echoed perfectly, yet no one was visible. Others have reported hearing muffled voices in cells that have been empty for years, whispers of frustration, despair, and anger that seem trapped in the concrete walls. Even after Persona-esque closure, these experiences persist, suggesting that the spirits of Tam's Correctional Center are not bound by the living world or physical occupation. Visitors frequently report intense emotional and physical reactions when exploring the facility. Many describe feelings of dread, anxiety, or nausea that intensify in the isolation wings. Goosebumps, sudden chills, and the sensation of unseen pressure on the body are common. Some experience disorientation, as though the corridors themselves are shifting or folding, or feel compelled to move in certain directions, guided by an unseen force. These reactions contribute to the perception that the building itself is charged with residual energy, particularly in areas associated with prolonged confinement and suffering. Even during daylight hours, TAMS exhibits subtle signs of it haunting. Shadows in corners shift unnaturally. Faint murmurs can be heard from empty cells, and doors occasionally move or creak without cause. Equipment continues to malfunction in the areas of highest activity, suggesting that the spiritual energy is not dependent on darkness or the cover of night. These daytime phenomena hint at the persistent, restless presence that has come to define the abandoned penitentiary. Tam's Correctional Center is more than a former prison. It is a repository of human suffering, fear, and unresolved energy. Shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, equipment malfunctions, and the heavy atmosphere of the isolation wings combine to create an environment charged with supernatural activity. Visitors confront a place where the past and present collide, where the echoes of long-forgotten prisoners linger, and where the building itself seems to remember every moment of anguish. For those who leave TAMS behind, the memory lingers the oppressive sense of being watched, footsteps echoing in silence, and the enduring presence of spirits who never left. Pontiac Correctional Center in Pontiac, Illinois, is a sprawling facility with a long and often troubled history. Built in the 1870s, it has housed thousands of inmates over more than a century, including some of the stadia's most dangerous criminals. Over the decades, stories of violence, despair, and tragedy have accumulated within its walls, and with them, a reputation for paranormal activity. Visitors and former employees alike report experiences that defy explanation. Whispers of inmates long gone, sudden and unexplained cold spots, shadowy figures disappearing around corners, and full-bodied apparitions standing silently in darkened hallways. These accounts have made Pontiac Correctional Center one of Illinois' most notoriously haunted institutions, drawing curiosity seekers and paranormal investigators from across the country. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Pontiac is the sound of whispers. Staff and visitors alike have described hearing faint murmurs, often echoing down empty corridors or drifting from abandoned cell blocks. These voices are sometimes coherent, carrying fragments of conversation or names, while at other times they are nothing more than indistinct murmurs that vanish as soon as attention is directed toward them. Employees working late shifts report feeling as though unseen eyes are watching, with the whispers seeming to follow them from one corridor to another. Some claim that the voices are the echoes of inmates who died within the prison, trapped by the emotional weight of their final moments and the harsh conditions they endured. Cold spots are another hallmark of the prison's eerie reputation. Visitors and staff frequently describe sudden drops in temperature, often localized to specific areas such as solitary confinement cells or near the chapel. These chilling pockets appear without warning, sometimes accompanied by a sense of unease or dread that cannot be attributed to drafts or natural airflow. Paranormal investigators have documented these cold zones using thermal cameras and temperature sensors, finding dramatic temperature differences in areas that appear otherwise undisturbed. For many who experience these unexplained chills, the sensation is visceral, a sudden awareness that the space around them is no longer entirely of the living world. Shadowy figures are a common feature of Pontiac Correctional Center's hauntings. Observers often report shapes moving around corners, down stairwells, or along corridors. These forms are typically humanoid but lack distinct features, giving them an insubstantial, ghostly quality. Many describe the figures as pacing or observing, as if trapped in repetitive motions reminiscent of the lives they once led within the prison. Some witnesses describe these shadows as vanishing when approached, leaving behind only an empty hallway or an unsettling silence. Some witnesses describe these shadows as pacing or observing, as if trapped in repetitive motions reminiscent of the lives they once led within the prison. The presence of these shadowy figures, combined with whispers and cold spots, creates an environment that feels intensely alive yet profoundly alien, a place where the boundary between the past and present seems porous. Full-bodied apparitions have also been reported at Pontiac Correctional Center. Unlike the shadowy figures, these entities are more defined, sometimes appearing as former inmates or guards, dressed in clothing indicative of the period in which they lived or worked. They have been seen standing silently in hallways, sitting in empty cells, or appearing at the ends of corridors. Witnesses frequently note that the apparitions vanish when approached, fading as if made of mist or shadow. The sudden appearance and disappearance of these entities has left even seasoned correctional officers and paranormal researchers unsettled, suggesting that the prison is more than just a site of human suffering. It is a place where the memories and energies of the past continue to linger. The history of Pontiac Correctional Center provides context for the unexplained activity reported there. Over more than a century, the prison has witnessed riots, assaults, and multiple deaths, including executions. The sheer number of individuals who have spent time within its walls, combined with the intensity of emotion, trauma, and fear experience, has contributed to an environment in which residual energy may persist. Some believe that this energy manifests in the form of whispers, cold spots, and apparitions, a reflection of lives lived under harsh conditions and the unresolved tensions of the past. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the activity at Pontiac Correctional Center for decades. Cameras have captured blurred figures moving in hallways or sitting in cells, while audio equipment records faint whispers and occasional knocks or footsteps. Thermal imaging often reveals sudden, unexplained temperature drops, while night vision footage sometimes shows full-bodied apparitions standing in otherwise empty corridors. Even those initially skeptical of the Prisona's haunted reputation often leave with a lingering sense of unease, citing inexplicable sensations and fleeting sights that defy rational explanation. Visitors and employees alike describe a palpable sense of presence within the prison. Hallways seem to press in, shadows move unnaturally. The whispers sometimes create a feeling that unseen entities are communicating directly with the living. Many who have spent time there emphasize the importance of caution, recommending that no one venture alone after dark, and that respect for the history of the facility is essential. The combination of historical tragedy and paranormal activity ensures that Pontiac Correctional Center remained a location both feared and revered. Pontiac Correctional Center is more than a correctional facility. It is a repository of human suffering, memory, and unexplained phenomena. All serve as reminders that the prison, holds more than cells and hallways. For those who enter its corridors, the experience is a confrontation with history, with human emotion, and with forces that continue to linger long after the last inmate has walked its halls. Oakdale Prison, located in Oakdale, Louisiana, is a decaying relic of the past, long abandoned yet still exuding an atmosphere of fear and suffering. Built in the late 19th century, the facility was once home to some of the region's most notorious criminals, housing inmates under harsh and unforgiving conditions. Stories of overcrowding, brutal punishments, and tragic deaths permeated its walls for decades. Though the prison has been closed for many years, visitors and explorers insist that Oakdale remains far from empty. Those who enter the crumbling structure report an array of chilling phenomena: ghostly cries, chains dragging across the floors, sudden cold drafts, and an ever-present sense of being watched. Even decades after its closure, the prison appears to hold tightly onto the energy of those who suffer within it. One of the most common experiences reported at Oakdale involves ghostly cries echoing through the corridors. Visitors describe hearing desperate voices calling for help, shouting names, or wailing in anguish. These sounds are often disorienting, appearing from multiple directions at once and vanishing as suddenly as they emerge. A group of urban explorers recounted walking through a long-abandoned cell block when a chorus of muffled cries filled the hallway. They froze in place, certain that someone had entered behind them. Yet when they turned, the corridor was empty. The echoes seemed to carry a weight of desperation, as though the walls themselves retained the memories of suffering and fear endured by countless inmates over decades. Chains dragging across floors are another frequently reported phenomenon. Even in parts of the prison where no metal equipment remains, people exploring the ruins hear the unmistakable sound of heavy chains scraping across the concrete. One visitor described stepping cautiously through an abandoned exercise yard when a loud dragging noise echoed across the building, only to vanish abruptly when they attempted to locate its source. Many believe these sounds are echoes of punishments carried out in prisoner-s history, or perhaps residual energy left behind by those who were shackled for long hours, their suffering imprinted into the very structure. Cold drafts brushing against the skin, even on warm days, are another signature of Oakdale-s paranormal activity. Visitors often report sudden chills sweeping across their necks or shoulders, sensations that appear in otherwise mild or hot weather. Some describe a feeling of being followed, as though unseen presences move silently through the corridors, brushing against them or guiding them along certain paths. One paranormal investigator recounted walking alone through the administration wing when he felt a sharp, icy sensation on his neck. Turning quickly, he saw nothing, yet the oppressive feeling lingered for several minutes, as if the building itself were aware of his presence. Paranormal teams exploring Oakdale have also captured electronic voice phenomena, EVP, documenting whispered pleas, cries, and screams that cannot be attributed to any human source. During investigations, recorders have picked up phrases such as "hey, help me," "don't leave me," and anguish shrieks that seem to echo from cell blocks long abandoned. These audio recordings often coincide with visual and tactile experiences reported by teams, reinforcing the belief that Oakdale harbors residual spiritual energy tied to the intense suffering of its former inmates. Visitors frequently describe a combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena that create a deeply immersive and unsettling environment. Shadows flit at the edges of vision, doors creak or slam without explanation, and faint figures sometimes appear briefly in the corner hallway or behind barred windows before vanishing. Shadows flit at the edges of vision, doors creak or slam without explanation, and faint figures sometimes appear briefly in the corner of a hallway or behind barred windows before vanishing. Shadows flit at the edges of vision, doors creak or slam without explanation, and faint figures sometimes appear briefly in the corner of a hallway or behind barred windows before vanishing. Some explorers report an overwhelming feeling of dread or nausea in certain areas, particularly near old punishment cells or rooms where executions were carried out. Some explorers report an overwhelming feeling of dread or nausea in certain areas, particularly near old punishment cells or rooms where executions were carried out. These experiences, though subjective, are consistent enough that Oakdale has earned a reputation as one of the most haunted abandoned prisons in Louisiana. Local lore preserves the Prisona's dark reputation. Stories passed down from residents speak of inmates who suffered horribly within its walls. Some die in isolation or in violent conflicts. Residents warn that those who enter the ruins may feel the lingering presence of these restless spirits, and caution against exploring alone or after dark. Tales of ghostly cries, dragging chains, cold drafts, and fleeting figures have been told for generations, creating an aura of fear and fascination that draws urban explorers, paranormal investigators, and curious visitors alike. Despite its abandonment, Oakdale Prison continues to attract those drawn to its dark history and paranormal reputation. Many leave with vivid accounts of ghostly cries echoing through empty corridors, chains moving without visible cause, cold drafts brushing their skin, and whispered pleas captured on audio recordings. Oakdale is more than a crumbling structure. It is a repository of human suffering and lingering energy, a place where the echoes of the past refuse to fade. Those who enter are reminded that some places remember, some spirits linger, and some cries never truly go unheard. Decatur Jail, an imposing brick structure in the heart of Decatur, stands as a stark reminder of a time when overcrowding, harsh punishments, and strict discipline defined incarceration. Though the facility is no longer in operation, its reputation has endured, drawing curious visitors, paranormal enthusiasts, and thrill seekers alike. Those who explore its deserted corridors speak of shadowy figures, unexplained noises, and a lingering sense of unease that seems to permeate the very walls. For many, Decatur Jail is more than an abandoned bodega. It is a place where the echoes of the past refuse to remain silent. One of the most commonly reported phenomena involves shadowy figures glimpsed through barred cells. Visitors often describe seeing inmates standing in the darkness, their forms indistinct yet unmistakably human. Some appear to be staring directly at observers, their presence heavy and unnerving, as though silently pleading for recognition or trapped in eternal observation. When approached, these figures often vanish without warning, leaving empty cells behind but a lingering sense of being watched. Many believe these apparitions are remnants of the jail's troubled history, inmates who suffered within its walls and whose energy has refused to dissipate over the decades. Phantom footsteps are another frequent occurrence in Decatur Jail. Empty corridors echo with the sounds of pacing, marching, or hurried steps, often following visitors as they move through the building. Some report that the footsteps match their own pace, creating the eerie sensation of being shadowed by unseen inmates. Others hear footsteps running ahead, stopping abruptly, or retreating as though the spirits are moving independently. Paranormal investigators frequently capture these sounds on audio equipment, even in areas that have been sealed or abandoned for years, reinforcing the perception that the jail remains alive with the activity of unseen occupants. Doors throughout the facility also seem to possess a life of their own. Visitors often report doors opening and closing without any visible cause, sometimes slowly, sometimes with a sudden bang that echoes through the empty halls. These movements are often accompanied by sudden chills or drafts, and some witnesses describe an almost tactile sensation, as if an unseen force is deliberately guiding them through the jail. Some witnesses describe an almost tactile sensation, as if an unseen force is deliberately guiding them through the jail. Former staff and local historians suggest that the residual energy in the building, particularly around cell blocks that once housed large numbers of inmates, could account for these phenomena, though the intensity and frequency of occurrences point to more than mere coincidence. Perhaps most unsettling are the reports of faint singing echoing through the deserted corridors. Some visitors describe soft, melancholic tunes, the voices distorted and ethereal, as if carried from another time. The singing is usually brief, often interrupted by sudden silence or replaced by the sound of footsteps or the creak of doors. Paranormal researchers suggest that these auditory experiences may be residual hauntings, fragments of human activity imprinted on the structure, replaying the moments when inmates sought solace or expression in an otherwise harsh and oppressive environment. The juxtaposition of song and shadow creates a haunting atmosphere. one that lingers long after visitors leave the building. The architecture of Decatur Jail amplifies its haunting qualities. Narrow hallways, thick brick walls, and barred cells create a space where sound travels unpredictably, and shadows cling to corners and ceilings. Areas once used for solitary confinement or punishment are particularly notorious for their paranormal activity. In these spaces, visitors report sudden drops in temperature, the sensation pressure on the chest, and the pervasive feeling of being watched. The oppressive design, combined with the historical suffering endured within its walls, has left an enduring imprint that seems to react to the presence of the living. Paranormal investigators visiting Decatur Jail often report equipment malfunctions or unusual readings in the areas of highest activity. EMF meters frequently spike near cell blocks, audio recorders capture faint whispers and footsteps, and thermal imaging reveals sudden cold spots where no physical source exists. One investigator described standing near a long-abandoned corridor when a shadow appeared at the far end, pacing in time with his own movements. Moments later, doors slammed in another section of the jail, and the shadow vanished. Playback of recordings confirmed faint singing and whispers. Even during the day, subtle signs of the haunting persist. Shadows sometimes appear to move independently of light sources. Small noises echo through empty halls, and doors occasionally shift without explanation. Visitors often report an uneasy feeling that they are not alone, even when exploring in groups. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena creates an environment where the past feels present, and the presence of unseen inmates is almost tangible. Decatur Jail is more than a former detention facility. It is a place where history, suffering, and lingering spirits converge. Shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, doors that move on their own, and faint singing combine to create an atmosphere charged with the energy of those who lived and suffered there. Visitors are confronted not just with the architecture of punishment, but with the echoes of lives lived in confinement, the sorrow and anger that remain, and the chilling reminder that some places never forget. For those who leave Decatur Jail, the haunting lingers, a subtle yet persistent presence, whispering that within these walls, the past is never truly gone. Cook County Jail in Chicago is one of the largest and most infamous correctional facilities in the United States. Built to house thousands of inmates, its walls contain a complex history of crime, punishment, and human suffering. Over the decades, stories of violence, despair, and tragedy have given rise to reports of persistent paranormal activity. Even in the modern sections of the facility, staff and visitors alike have reported encounters with apparitions, shadowy figures gliding past security cameras, disembodied footsteps echoing across concrete corridors, and strange cold spots that appear near older cell blocks. Even in the modern sections of the facility, staff and visitors alike have reported encounters with apparitions, shadowy figures gliding past security cameras, disembodied footsteps echoing across concrete corridors, and strange cold spots that appear near older cell blocks. These accounts have led paranormal investigators to suggest that the energy of decades of suffering has never dissipated, leaving a lingering presence that continues to affect those within the jail. Staff members who work night shifts often describe seeing shadowy figures moving silently through hallways, sometimes crossing their line of sight without triggering alarms or cameras. These figures are frequently humanoid in shape, but lack distinct features, giving them an otherworldly, insubstantial quality. Some observers report seeing prisoners from long ago, dressed in outdated uniforms, pacing in repetitive motions as if trapped in time. Others describe shadows that vanish the moment they are approached, leaving only an eerie emptiness and a sense of being watched. The presence of these figures is not limited to the older wings of the jail. Even in modern sections, security personnel report glimpses of forms appearing and disappearing in hallways and common areas. Disembodied footsteps are another recurring phenomenon at Cook County Jail. Staff and visitors have reported the sound of shoes tapping or dragging across the concrete floors of empty corridors. The echoing pattern unmistakably human. These footsteps often appear to follow individuals, stopping and starting as though matching their pace. Yet when they turn to investigate, no one is there. In some cases, the sound of footsteps has been recorded on security audio, capturing patterns that cannot be explained by natural causes or building acoustics. Witnesses often describe a sense of tension or unease accompanying the footsteps, as if the sound is a reminder of lives once lived and lost within the prison walls. Cold spots and sudden temperature fluctuations are another hallmark of paranormal activity at the facility. Even during the heat of summer, staff report encountering icy pockets of air near old cell blocks, solitary confinement areas, or corridors where the oldest prisoners were housed. These cold spots often appear without warning, creating a visceral sense of discomfort and fear. Paranormal investigators equipped with thermal cameras have documented significant temperature drops in these areas, sometimes coinciding with other unusual phenomena, such as moving shadows or disembodied sounds. Many who experience these chills report a heavy, almost oppressive feeling, as if the weight of past suffering has been condensed into a tangible presence. The history of Cook County Jail provides context for persistent reports of haunting. For decades, the facility has housed some of the city's most dangerous criminals, and has been the site of countless altercations, riots, suicides, and deaths. Inmates endured overcrowding, harsh conditions, and isolation, experiences that generated intense emotional energy. Paranormal researchers suggest that this energy is not fully dissipated, lingering in the corridors, cell blocks, and common areas as residual haunting. The combination of physical suffering, emotional turmoil, and violent death makes the jail a prime candidate for persistent paranormal activity, according to those who study such phenomena. Paranormal investigations have captured a range of unusual activity within Cook County Jail. Cameras have recorded fleeting shadows moving through corridors, sometimes darting across hallways or hovering near old cells. Audio devices pick up faint whispers, footsteps, or low moaning sound that seem to come from empty areas. Thermal imaging occasionally reveals sudden temperature anomalies, suggesting the presence of unseen entities. Even for seasoned investigators, these phenomena are unsettling, particularly when the evidence is consistent across multiple nights and different sections of the facility. The combination of visual, auditory, and thermal anomalies has led many to conclude that Cook County Jail harbors a level of paranormal activity that cannot easily be explained. Visitors and staff also describe a tangible atmosphere that is difficult to ignore. Hallways often feel heavy with unseen pressure. Shadows appear where they shoot in a T, and the air sometimes carries an inexplicable chill or tension. Shadows appear where they shoot in a T, and the air sometimes carries an inexplicable chill or tension. Even those who enter with skepticism often find themselves unsettled, aware of movements or sensations they cannot rationally explain. Employees have recounted moments of sudden unease or a strong sense of being observed, particularly in areas where historical tragedies occurred. These experiences suggest that the past continues to assert its presence, shaping the environment in subtle but unmistakable ways. Cook County Jail is more than a correctional facility. It is a repository of decades of human suffering, emotion, and history. The apparitions, shadowy figures, disembodied footsteps, and unexplained cold spots are reminders that the building holds more than cells and corridors. It holds memories, anguish, and lingering spirits. Whether the experience is a result of residual energy, conscious entities, or a combination of both, the jail continues to evoke fear and fascination among those who enter its walls. For staff, visitors, and paranormal enthusiasts alike, every shadow, echo, and chill serves as a reminder that Cook County Jail is a place where the past remains vividly present, and where the boundary between the living and the spectral is hauntingly thin. Jacksonville Correctional Center in Jacksonville, Illinois, stands as a somber reminder of the human stories that unfolded within its walls. Operating for decades, the prison has housed countless inmates, some notorious, others forgotten by time. Over the years, it has been the site of violence, despair, and sudden tragedies, leaving behind a legacy that many claim lingers long after the cells were emptied. Today, visitors and staff alike report experiences that suggest Jacksonville Correctional Center is far from abandoned in spirit. From ghostly inmates pacing the halls to doors swinging open and closed without explanation, The prison appears to retain the energy of those who once lived and suffered within its confines, creating an atmosphere that is both unsettling and strangely magnetic. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Jacksonville involved the appearance of ghostly inmates. Visitors often describe seeing shadowy figures moving to the corridors, pacing back and forth as though trapped in routines from another time. These apparitions are generally indistinct, appearing as dark silhouettes that glide silently across hallways, disappearing into walls or around corners when approached. Some witnesses claim the figures wear clothing consistent with earlier periods of the Persona S operation, suggesting that the spirits of long-deceased inmates continue to wander the halls, replaying moments of their confinement in a spectral echo of the past. Doors opening and closing on their own is another hallmark of the Persona S haunting. Staff and explorers alike have reported hearing heavy metal doors swing wide without warning, sometimes followed by a series of consecutive slams. In some instances, doors will move as though pushed by an invisible force, even in areas where no one else is present. These occurrences often intensify in wings associated with older cells or historic punishment areas, creating an oppressive atmosphere where the ordinary rules of physics seem suspended. Many believe that these moving doors are expressions of unrest, remnants of the struggles, frustrations, and torments endured by inmates long gone. Whispers repeating the words of long-forgotten prisoners are also commonly reported. Explorers and staff have described hearing faint voices murmuring in the dark, repeating names, phrases, or fragments of conversations that seem impossibly old. One visitor recounted walking through a deserted cell block when a whisper repeated over and over, "iconata, get outa." The voice was faint yet unmistakable, carrying a weight of desperation that lingered in the air. Such auditory phenomena are often seen as residual echoes of suffering, a way in which the emotional energy of past inmates manifests to those sensitive to it. These whispers can be disorienting, creating the impression that the walls themselves are alive with memory. Phantom shadows moving through the exercise yards at night are another unsettling aspect of Jacksonville's reputation. Visitors and security personnel have described figures pacing or wandering through open spaces, only to vanish when approached. These shadows often appear humanoid, though their movements can be fluid and unnatural, gliding rather than walking. One night, a paranormal investigator monitoring the yard reported seeing a figure pause near the far fence, as if observing the cameras, before dissolving into the darkness. The empty yards at night, combined with the sudden appearance and disappearance of these shadows, reinforce the sense that the prison is still inhabited by spirits, bound to the spaces they once occupied in life. The overall atmosphere inside Jacksonville Correctional Center can be overwhelmingly heavy. Visitors often report sudden chills, a sense of being watched, or an oppressive feeling in certain areas, particularly older cell blocks and punishment wings. Some claim to feel subtle touches or the sensation of someone walking close behind them, even when the hallways are deserted. These sensations, coupled with the visual and auditory phenomena, contribute to a profound sense of unease and make the prison a compelling, if unnerving, sight for those interested in the paranormal. Paranormal teams investigating Jacksonville have documented a variety of anomalies. Audio recordings capture whispered voices, fragments of conversations, and occasional sudden shouts that have no identifiable source. Thermal imaging frequently reveals pockets of cold air in specific areas, often corresponding with reports of ghostly activity. Long exposure photography has sometimes captured blurred, semi-transparent forms in hallways or exercise yards, suggesting movement where none should exist. Experts often theorize that the intense emotional energy accumulated over decades of anger, fear, and despair has left residual impressions that continue to manifest to this day. Local lore and staff experiences have cemented Jacksonville Correctional Center's haunted reputation. Tales of ghostly inmates, moving doors, whispered words, and shadowy figures are passed down from one generation of guards and explorers to the next. These stories serve both as warnings and as reminders of the Persona's dark past, ensuring that the energy of the past continues to hold sway over those who enter its halls. Despite its unsettling reputation, Jacksonville Correctional Center continues to attract historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious visitors. Many leave with vivid recollections of shadowy inmates pacing empty corridors, doors moving on their own, whispers echoing long-forgotten words, and figures vanishing into the night in the exercise yards. Jacksonville Correctional Center is more than an abandoned prison. It is a place where history, tragedy, and lingering energy converge, a site where the spirits of those who endured suffering continue to wander, reminding all who enter that some walls never forget and some presences never truly leave. The Western Illinois Penitentiary in Macomb looms as a monumental relic of a harsh past, its crumbling walls and rusted gates standing as reminders of decades spent housing prisoners under strict supervision. Though largely abandoned, the facility continues to captivate the imaginations of locals, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts alike, drawn by tales of restless spirits, eerie sounds, and unexplained phenomena that seem to persist long after the penitentiary ceased operations. Those who enter the penitentiary often describe an oppressive atmosphere, a weight that presses upon the chest, as if the building itself remembers the countless souls that once lived and suffered within its walls. One of the most frequently reported occurrences involves ghostly figures moving along the penitentiary's long, narrow corridors. Visitors describe seeing shadowy forms appearing and disappearing at the far ends of hallways, their shapes sometimes indistinct, sometimes resembling inmates in old prison garb. These figures are often described as pacing back and forth, as if trapped in an endless loop, while others seem to be silently observing intruders, their presence tangible yet elusive. When approached, the figures vanish without warning, leaving only the echo of movement behind and a lingering chill in the air. Paranormal researchers believe these apparitions are residual energy from prisoners who endured years of confinement and strict discipline, unable to leave the penitentiary even in death. Chains clanking in empty rooms are another hallmark of Western Illinois Penitentiary's haunted reputation. Visitors often hear the distinct sound of metal striking metal, sometimes accompanied by the scraping of boots or muffled thuds along the floor. The noises occur in areas where cells have long since been stripped of doors and furnishings, amplifying the eerie sensation that somebody or something that is still confined within the walls. Investigators have recorded these sounds on audio equipment, capturing repeated metallic echoes that cannot be attributed to the structural settling of the building or natural environmental causes. The sound of chains are particularly pronounced in cell blocks formerly used for solitary confinement, suggesting that the spirits of those once held there continue to replay the trauma of captivity. Auditory phenomena extend beyond the sound of chains. Many visitors report hearing the voices of prisoners crying out for freedom, whispers of despair, and occasional shouts that seem to come from the farthest corners of the penitentiary. Some claim the voices call names or repeat phrases from decades past, their echoes carried unpredictably along the corridors. Paranormal investigators have noted that these sounds often coincide with EMF spikes or sudden temperature drops, reinforcing the belief that they are linked to spiritual activity rather than ordinary acoustics. Campers and explorers who linger too long in certain wings report profound emotional reaction, a mix of fear, sadness, and anxiety, as if the building itself is imparting the memories of suffering it has witnessed. Spectral images of guards patrolling long empty halls are among the most unsettling experiences reported. Witnesses describe seeing upright figures walking along corridors, their uniforms crisp and faces indistinct, holding the posture of authority even in death. Some apparitions appear to conduct rounds, checking cells and moving with methodical precision, while others seem to pause and watch visitors before fading into shadows. Observers often describe an uncanny sensation that their own movements are being mirrored or anticipated by these spectral guards, heightening the feeling of being observed and adding to the penitentiary's oppressive atmosphere. The architecture of Western Illinois Penitentiary amplifies its haunting qualities. Narrow hallways, high ceilings, and long corridors create acoustics that carry every sound, from the smallest footstep to the faintest whisper. Bars, rusted doors, and crumbling walls lend the environment a sense of isolation, even in areas that are accessible to visitors. Shadowed corners and peeling paint provide an ideal backdrop for the human imagination. Yet the frequency and consistency of sightings and sounds suggest that these are more than visual illusions. The building itself seems to retain memory, responding to the presence of the living with phenomena that evoke the hardships of its past inhabitants. At the penitentiary, EMF meters spike near old cell blocks. Cameras experience unexplained glitches, and audio recorders capture whispers, cries, and the clinking of chains that cannot be explained by environmental factors, as if the air itself is being shaped by an unseen presence. Pressure on the shoulders, sudden chills, or a tugging feeling at the ankles, as though the spirits are reaching out from the past to interact with the living. Even during daylight hours, the penitentiary exudes an unsettling presence. Shadows flicker in corners, doors creak without cause, and subtle noises echo through the empty wings. Visitors often describe a sensation of being watched, a quiet awareness of unseen eyes following their every movement. These daytime manifestations suggest that the penitentiary-esque spirits are not limited to the covered night. They are present at all times, waiting, observing, and replaying the moments of pain, discipline, and unrest that define its history. Western Illinois Penitentiary in Macomb is more than a long-abandoned building. It is a repository of human suffering, memory, and spectral activity. Ghostly figures, the clanking of chains, cries for freedom, and the patrolling of unseen guards combine to create an environment dense with supernatural tension. Visitors who walk its corridors confront a past that refuses to remain behind them, an echo of lives spent in confinement, fear, and authority that lingers long after the prison doors are closed. For those who leave, the haunting endures, a subtle but undeniable presence that whispers of the penitentiary's restless inhabitants and the stories they continue to tell. Illinois State Prison in Springfield is a sprawling facility with a long and often troubling history. The prisoner's older sections, constructed decades ago, have developed a reputation for paranormal activity that has drawn both curiosity seekers and researchers alike. Visitors and former employees report unsettling experiences: shadowy figures standing in darkened cells, sudden cold drafts moving through hallways, doors slamming violently despite no one nearby, and the faint echoes of groans that seem to originate from prisoners long gone. These phenomena have contributed to the belief that the prison is not merely a building of brick and stone, but a repository of the intense emotions, suffering, and memories of those who spent time behind its walls. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena at Illinois State Prison. Witnesses often describe humanoid shapes moving silently through the old cell blocks, their forms indistinct yet undeniably present. Some appear to be standing in cells, staring blankly, as if trapped in a moment frozen in time. Others are seen pacing corridors, their movements deliberate but ghostly, vanishing when approached. Visitors have recounted glimpses of these figures from a corner of their eyes, or captured blurry silhouettes on cameras during overnight investigations. Many believe these figures are the lingering spirits of inmates who suffered or died within the prison, bound to the place by the intensity of their experiences. Cold drafts frequently accompany these sightings, adding a tactile dimension to Prisona's haunted reputation. Even during the heat of summer, sudden pockets of freezing air are reported in hallways, cells, and stairwells. These chills often appear without explanation, passing through walls and doors, and leaving witnesses with a sense of unease. Paranormal investigators have documented significant drops in temperature in areas where shadowy figures have been observed, suggesting a correlation between the apparitions and localized cold spots. Staff members working late-night shifts frequently note the eerie nature of these drafts, sometimes describing a sensation of being watched or followed by an unseen presence. Doors slamming violently without any apparent cause is another hallmark of paranormal activity at Illinois State Prison. Inmates long released or relocated, staff and investigators alike have reported doors in old sections of the prison swinging open and shut on their own, often accompanied by sudden gusts of wind or creaking sounds that echo down empty hallways. In some cases, multiple doors slam in succession, creating a cacophony of noise that seems to fill the corridors with unseen energy. These events are unpredictable, adding to the fear and uncertainty that pervades the older wings of the facility. Witnesses often experience a combination of auditory and tactile phenomena simultaneously, intensifying the impression that something beyond the natural world is present. Auditory phenomena extend beyond slamming doors. Visitors report hearing faint groans, murmurs, and cries that appear to emanate from empty cells or distant corridors. The sounds often resemble the anguished voices of prisoners, caught in moments of despair from the past. Some describe whispers calling out names or pleading for help, their origins impossible to trace. These auditory experiences, combined with shadowy figures and cold drafts, create a multi-sensory environment that makes even the most skeptical observer pause. The echoes of suffering seem to linger in the architecture itself, imbuing the old prison with a heavy and unsettling atmosphere. The history of Illinois State Prison offers insight into these phenomena. The facility has housed generations of inmates, some serving decades for serious offenses, others facing the harsh realities of overcrowding and strict discipline. Riots, fights, and deaths, including suicides and executions, have all occurred within the prison walls. The emotional intensity of these events, coupled with the repeated exposure to fear, isolation, and pain, has led many to speculate that residual energy has accumulated over time. Paranormal experts suggest that such energy can manifest in visual, auditory, and tactile ways, explaining the shadowy figures, groans, cold drafts, and violent door movements reported by those who venture into the old sections. Investigations into the prison's paranormal activity have been ongoing. Cameras frequently capture unexplainable shadows or shapes moving through hallways. Audio equipment records faint cries, footsteps, and whispers that cannot be attributed to ordinary sounds. Thermal imaging detects cold spots and fluctuating temperatures in areas with a high density of reports. Even seasoned investigators find the prison unnerving, noting a palpable weight in certain corridors and cells, as if the building itself retains the memory of past events. These findings reinforce the idea that Illinois State Prison is not just haunted by legend, but by persistent, unexplained phenomena that continue to affect those who enter its older wings. Visitors and staff report that time spent in these areas often feels oppressive. Hallways seem to stretch unnaturally, shadows appear to move independently of light, and cold spots seem to follow individuals as they navigate the corridors. Even short visits leave a lasting impression, as if the prison's past has imprinted itself onto the present. Many who explore or work in these areas emphasize the importance of caution and respect. Understanding that the prison is more than a bodega, it is a living testament to decades of human suffering and unresolved energy. Shadowy figures in darkened cells, sudden cold drafts, doors slamming with force, and groans echoing from empty hallways all contribute to an environment steeped in mystery and fear. Peoria County Jail, located in the heart of Peoria, Illinois, is a building steeped in history, tension, and tragedy. Constructed in the 19th century, it served as a holding facility for countless inmates, many of whom faced long sentences, harsh conditions, or even execution. Over decades, the jail became infamous not only for its security measures, but also for the countless tragedies that unfolded within its walls. Even today, long after many of its cells have been emptied and parts of the facility abandoned, visitors, staff, and paranormal investigators report unsettling experiences that suggest Peoria County Jail is far from lifeless. Phantom prisoners, disembodied whispers, and unexplained disturbances all point to a lingering presence, as if the very walls of the jail have absorbed centuries of fear, pain, and finality. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves phantom prisoners pacing the floors. Visitors have described seeing shadowy figures moving along the cell blocks, walking with deliberate rhythm, as if retracing the steps they once took in life. These figures are often indistinct, appearing as dark silhouettes that glide silently across hallways before vanishing when approached. Witnesses have noted that some figures seem to wear older prison garb, suggesting they are spirits from decades past, replaying moments of confinement endlessly. One night, an overnight visitor described spotting a lone shadow pacing back and forth in the corridor outside the old solitary confinement wing. As he tried to get closer, the figure simply faded, leaving behind an oppressive silence that lingered long after the encounter. Mysterious knocks and footsteps are also a common occurrence at Peoria County Jail. Even in sections of the building long abandoned, people report hearing heavy footsteps echoing along corridors, or rhythmic knocking on cell doors where no one is present. One security guard recounted walking past the execution block late at night when a series of sharp knocks rang out, seemingly from inside a cell. Investigating the area, he found no source, no disturbance, only the lingering echo of sound bouncing off the stone walls. These auditory phenomena often occur in places tied to punishment or isolation, giving the impression that the energy of past inmates continues to replay itself for those present. Whispers repeating the last words of executed prisoners are another chilling aspect of the jail's reputation. Visitors have reported hearing faint voices, often indistinct at first, gradually forming coherent phrases. Many of these voices are said to utter pleas, confessions, or final statements spoken before execution, lingering like echoes of despair trapped in the building's structure. One paranormal investigator described capturing EVP recordings in which a whisper repeatedly said, "I'm sorry, forgive me," though no one else was present to speak. These whispers carry a heavy emotional weight, giving the impression that the words of those who face death at Peoria County Jail are etched permanently into the air. Solitary confinement cells are widely regarded as hotspots for paranormal activity. Many visitors and investigators report sudden chills, oppressive feelings, or an overwhelming sense of dread when entering these areas. Electronic interference is common, with cameras, flashlights, and audio recorders malfunctioning inexplicably. Some investigators have captured strange visual anomalies on video or photographic equipment, with faint figures appearing to move behind bars or linger in corners where no one should be present. The combination of emotional energy from decades of isolation, punishment, and despair is believed to contribute to the heightened paranormal activity in these cells, making them particularly potent areas for encounters with the unexplained. Other sensory experiences are also frequently reported. Shadows flit at the edge of vision, doors creak or slam without cause, and cold spots move suddenly through otherwise warm areas. Visitors sometimes feel invisible touches or pressure, especially along hallways connected to older cell blocks. The cumulative effect of these phenomena creates a deeply immersive and unnerving environment, one that makes Peoria County Jail a magnet for those interested in the paranormal, as well as a place that commands respect from casual visitors. Paranormal investigations have documented a wide range of anomalies throughout the facility. Audio recordings capture whispers, footsteps, and knocks that cannot be traced to any human source. Thermal imaging detects pockets of cold air, often coinciding with areas associated with historical punishment or executions. Long exposure photography occasionally reveals blurred, semi-transparent figures moving through corridors or standing near cells. These findings suggest that the concentrated energy of past suffering, fear, and death has left lasting spiritual impressions, which continue to manifest to those sensitive to such phenomena. Local lore reinforces Peoria County Jail's haunted reputation. Stories of phantom prisoners, last words repeated in whispers, and unexplained sounds are passed down among staff and shared with curious visitors. Even today, residents speak of the jail as a place where the past refuses to rest, where echoes of suffering continue to linger, and where the line between the living and the dead can feel perilously thin. Despite its grim reputation, Peoria County Jail continues to draw historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and adventurers. Many leave with vivid memories of shadowy inmates pacing floors, doors moving on their own, whispers echoing final words, and sudden chills in solitary cells. Peoria County Jail is more than a historic building. It is a living monument to human suffering, a repository of energy and emotion, and a place where the past refuses to fade, reminding all who enter that some walls never forget and some voices never truly leave. Champaign County Jail, located in the heart of Champaign, Illinois, has long held a reputation for more than just its role in law enforcement. Though still standing, the building has become a magnet for paranormal enthusiasts and curious visitors drawn by reports of unexplained phenomena. The facility, with its narrow corridors, heavy metal doors, and echoing cell blocks, exudes an oppressive atmosphere, particularly in areas long abandoned or seldom used. Visitors often speak of shadowy forms gliding silently across hallways, doors opening of their own accord, and the unnerving sensation of unseen presences nearby, making it a sight that continues to intrigue and frighten those who dare enter. One of the most frequently reported experiences involves ghostly figures moving along the corridors. Witnesses describe shadowy forms gliding silently across hallways, sometimes disappearing into walls or around corners, leaving no trace of their passage. Sometimes disappearing into walls or around corners, leaving no trace of their passage. These figures are often seen at the edge of vision, fleeting and elusive, their presence unmistakable yet impossible to approach. Some visitors have reported seeing individuals wearing the garb of past inmates, their features blurred, moving with an eerie purpose. When observed directly, these forms vanish, leaving only the echo of movement and a lingering chill in the air. Paranormal researchers suggest that these are residual manifestations of prisoners, whose lives were marked by hardship and confinement, repeating fragments of their existence. In a place they once called home, doors that open and close without explanation are another common occurrence. Visitors recount moments when cell doors swing gently, sometimes slowly, sometimes with sudden slam, in areas where no living person is present. The phenomenon is particularly pronounced in older sections of the jail, where the building's age and historical activity may amplify residual energy. In some instances, the motion of the doors appears deliberate, as if guiding visitors along certain corridors or warning them away from particular cells. These unexplained movements often coincide with sudden cold drafts or the feeling of a presence nearby, reinforcing the impression that the building itself is alive with unseen activity. Shadowy forms appearing at the edge of vision contribute to the jail's eerie atmosphere. Many witnesses describe glimpsing dark shapes that vanish when attention is focused directly upon them. These forms are often humanoid, but vague enough to remain undefined, creating a sense of unease that lingers long after they disappear. Some observers have noted that the shadows appear near doorways, along stairwells, or in corners of hallways where light barely reaches, as if the spirits are aware of the living presence but remain just out of reach. Paranormal investigators suggest that these manifestations may be tied to memories of suffering and fear experienced by past inmates, energy that continues to imprint upon the structure itself. Physical sensations are also reported by those who explore the jail. Many describe feeling unseen hands brushing against their shoulders, or the sudden pressure of an invisible presence close behind them. The sensations are often accompanied by chills that seem to seep into the bone, a heaviness in the chest, or a sense of being watched from all sides. Some visitors report experiencing moments of disorientation, as if their movements are mirrored or anticipated by something unseen, heightening the feeling that the building is more than an empty structure. It is a living memory of confinement, despair, and lingering energy. The architecture of Champaign County Jail amplifies the impact of these supernatural experiences. Narrow corridors, heavy metal doors, and tight cell blocks create acoustics where even the smallest sound of footsteps, creaks, or distant clanks echoes unnaturally, making the building feel alive. Shadows cling to corners and ceilings, particularly in areas where lighting is dim or non-existent, creating ideal conditions for apparitions and perceptual anomalies to appear. Investigators have noted that these spaces often coincide with the highest concentration of reported phenomena, suggesting that both the history and physical design of the jail contribute to its haunted reputation. Auditory phenomena are another striking feature. Visitors have reported faint whispers echoing from empty cells, indistinct murmurs along hallways, and occasional soft moans that rise and fall unpredictably. Paranormal researchers often capture these sounds on recording equipment, revealing layered, indecipherable voices that seem to emanate from multiple locations at once. The combination of sound, movement, and temperature changes reinforces the impression that the jail is not merely a building, but a repository of human experience, memory, and lingering energy. Even during daylight hours, subtle signs of haunting persist. Shadows shift without cause, doors occasionally move, and unexplained sounds echo faintly through empty halls. Visitors often report a lingering sense of unease, the perception of being observed, or fleeting glimpses of dark figures that vanish when focused on. These daytime manifestations suggest that the spirits and energy of Champaign County Jail are not confined to night, but persist continuously, reacting to those who enter and bearing witness to the Bodinga-esque turbulent history. Champaign County Jail is more than a historic correctional facility. It is a site where memory, fear, and lingering spirits converge. Figures gliding through hallways, doors opening by themselves, shadowy shapes at the edge of vision, and unseen hands brushing against visitors all contribute to an environment dense with supernatural energy. Those who explore its corridors confront the echoes of lives lived in confinement and the persistent presence of those who never truly left. For those who depart, the haunting remains a subtle, chilling reminder that within the walls of Champaign County Jail, the past is never gone, and some presences endure beyond death. St. Clair County Jail in Belleville, Illinois, is an institution with a long and often troubled history. The facility, which has housed countless inmates over the decades, is known not only for its role in the Stadia-esque criminal justice system, but also for persistent reports of paranormal activity that surround it. Witnesses describe ghostly figures appearing near old cell blocks, phantom footsteps pacing the floors, and voices whispering desperate pleas for freedom. Paranormal investigators who have spent nights within the facility have captured strange orbs and misty figures on camera, reinforcing the belief that the jail is home to active spiritual presence. These accounts have made St. Clair County Jail a focal point for those fascinated by the supernatural, and a place where the weight of past suffering is said to linger in tangible ways. Among the most commonly reported phenomena are ghostly figures seen near the older sections of a jail. Witnesses often describe humanoid shapes that seem to appear and disappear at will, sometimes standing silently in darkened cells or pacing slowly along the hallways. Some of these apparitions appear dressed in outdated inmate uniforms, a visual echo of those who lived and died within facility-esque walls decades ago. Others are indistinct, shadowy forms that vanish when approached, leaving only a sense of unease in their wake. Staff members working late shifts frequently recount moments when a figure seems to watch them from the corner of a cell, creating an unnerving impression that the building itself is alive with residual energy. Phantom footsteps are another hallmark of St. Clair County Jail's haunted reputation. These sounds are often reported in corridors that are otherwise empty, echoing with a rhythm unmistakably human. Sometimes the footsteps appear to follow visitors, pacing in tandem with their movements, only to vanish without explanation. In other cases, they are heard near old cell blocks or solitary confinement areas, creating a sensation that unseen inmates are still roaming the halls. Staff and paranormal investigators alike have described feeling sudden chills or a weight in the air when these sounds occur, reinforcing the idea that the footsteps are more than mere echoesa. They are the remnants of life and emotion trapped within the facility. Auditory phenomena extend beyond footsteps. Whispering voices are frequently reported, often carrying pleas for freedom or expressions of distress. These voices sometimes call out names, while at other times they murmur unintelligibly, fading in and out as though caught between worlds. Visitors describe an unsettling sense of immediacy in these whispers, as if the spirits are attempting to communicate directly with those present. The combination of auditory experiences with the visual and tactile phenomena of shadowy figures, cold spots, and unexplained movements creates a multi-sensory environment that makes the jail's old sections deeply unsettling, even for those accustomed to the atmosphere of correctional facilities. Cold spots and sudden temperature fluctuations are another frequent occurrence at ST. Witnesses often report areas where the air suddenly becomes icy, even during warm summer months. These pockets of cold are particularly common near older cell blocks, stairwells, and hallways where inmates once endured harsh conditions. Paranormal investigators equipped with thermal cameras have documented these temperature anomalies, sometimes coinciding with the appearance of misty figures or floating orbs. Many who experience these chills report a visceral sense of unease, as though the air itself carries the weight of past suffering. Orbs and misty figures captured on camera have become a significant part of the jail's paranormal record. Paranormal teams often record small, glowing spheres moving through corridors or hovering above empty cells, sometimes darting in ways that suggest intelligence or intent. Misty figures are also captured on video or photography, often in areas with a history of intense emotional events, such as solitary confinement or sections that previously housed long-term inmates. These manifestations are frequently observed alongside auditory phenomena, reinforcing the impression that the jail is a site of active spiritual energy rather than isolated or coincidental occurrences. The history of St. Clair County Jail helps explain the intensity of these reports. Over the decades, the facility has been the site of countless arrests, incarcerations, and, in some cases, deaths. Inmates have experienced isolation, violence, and despair, and the cumulative emotional weight of these experiences is often cited by paranormal experts as a potential source of lingering energy. Incidents of suicide, sudden deaths, and extreme hardship within the Persona S walls have contributed to the belief that the spirits of those who suffer there continue to occupy the space, manifesting as visual, auditory, and physical phenomena that cannot be easily dismissed. Investigations at the jail have been ongoing for years. Cameras, audio devices, and thermal equipment frequently detect anomalies consistent with witness accounts. Investigators have documented shadowy figures moving along hallways, orbs floating near old cells, chilling temperature drops in specific areas. Even skeptics often report a sense of oppression or unease, noting that the jail seems to carry a tangible weight from its history. Visitors and staff alike are advised to exercise caution and maintain respect when navigating the older parts of the facility, recognizing that the Persona S past continues to exert influence over the present. St. Clair County Jail is more than a correctional facility. It is a place where decades of human suffering and emotion are said to persist. Ghostly figures, phantom footsteps, whispered pleas, cold spots, and misty apparitions all contribute to a pervasive sense of lingering presence. For those who enter the old cell blocks, every shadow, every sound, and every chill serves as a reminder that the jail holds more than inmates. In Celsa, it holds the echoes of lives shaped by confinement, fear, and loss, and in those echoes, the unexplained continues to endure. Rock Island Prison, situated along the Mississippi River in Rock Island, Illinois, is a structure steeped in history, fear, and lingering unrest. Established in the 19th century, the prison housed countless inmates over decades, many of whom faced harsh sentences, brutal treatment, and in some cases, violent deaths. Over the years, the facility became infamous for its strict confinement methods, disciplinary measures, and tragic events that unfolded behind its stone walls. Even now, long after parts of the prison have aged and fallen into disrepair, visitors report experiences that suggest Rock Island Prison is far from lifeless. Shadowy figures, unexplained sounds, and subtle, chilling sensations paint a picture of a place haunted not only by the memories of its past, but by the presence of those who remain trapped within its corridors. One of the most commonly reported phenomena involves shadowy figures gliding past cell bars. Witnesses often describe seeing dark silhouettes moving silently along hallways, sometimes peering through barred windows or pacing the floors, as if reliving moments from their lives. These figures are rarely clear, often appearing as dark, indistinct forms that vanish when approached. Visitors have recounted moments when they caught a glimpse of a prisoner's shadow lingering at the end of a corridor, only for it to dissolve into the darkness when they drew closer. Some of these apparitions seem tied to particular cells or wings, suggesting that the spirits are connected to locations where they lived, suffered, or died. Doors opening and closing on their own is another hallmark of Rock Island Prisona's haunted reputation. Staff, explorers, and paranormal investigators have reported heavy metal doors swinging wide without explanation or slamming shut abruptly in otherwise empty corridors. In certain wings, doors appear to react to the presence of visitors, moving as if unseen hands are guiding them. Many believe that these movements are echoes of past struggles, moments of fear, or attempts by restless spirits to communicate or warn the living. One paranormal team described walking through a long-abandoned cell block when a door swung open slowly, creaking as it moved, then shut just as suddenly, leaving only the faint sound of the hinges lingering in the air. Mysterious, disembodied voices calling names or uttering fragments of speech are also frequently reported. Visitors often hear whispers, murmurs, or faint shouts that seem to originate from nowhere, sometimes repeating names or phrases associated with past inmates. One investigator recalled hearing a soft voice clearly call the name of an inmate who had died decades earlier, even though no one else was present. These auditory experiences are often chillingly precise, giving the impression that the prison is not only aware of the living presence, but is actively responding to it. Some believe these voices are residual energy from intense emotionanza, fear, anger, regretta, left imprinted on the building itself. Visitors sometimes report more tactile encounters as well. A number of people describe feeling invisible hands gripping their arms, tugging at their clothing, or brushing across their shoulders. These sensations often vanish when the person turns to look, leaving a fleeting but undeniable impression of another presence. One overnight visitor recounted walking down a deserted corridor when she felt a firm pressure on her elbow, as if someone had grabbed her briefly. Turning quickly, she saw nothing, but the sensation lingered, accompanied by a sudden chill that ran through the hallway. Such experiences contribute to the overall sense that the prison is alive with unseen observers, bound to the physical space by experiences of confinement, suffering, and untimely death. The atmosphere within Rock Island Prison can be oppressive, especially in areas associated with older cells, punishment wings, or abandoned sections. Visitors frequently describe sudden drops in temperature, inexplicable cold spots, and a general sense of unease. Shadows at the edges of vision, faint sounds echoing through hallways, and the feeling of being watched are all common. These sensations, combined with visual and auditory phenomena, make exploring the prison a deeply immersive experience, and one that many find both fascinating and unsettling. Paranormal teams have documented numerous anomalies throughout the prison. Audio equipment often captures whispers, footsteps, and muffled cries where no one is present. Thermal imaging reveals pockets of sudden cold, often coinciding with reported sightings of shadowy figures. Long-exposure photography occasionally captures blurred or semi-transparent forms moving through corridors, while security cameras sometimes record fleeting figures in areas known for historical incidents. Investigators suggest that the intense emotional energy accumulated over decades of imprisonment, punishment, and death has left residual imprints, manifesting as the ghostly phenomena experienced today. Local lore reinforces the Prisona's reputation as a haunted site. Tales of shadowy inmates, moving doors, disembodied voices, and sudden touches are shared among residents, visitors, and staff alike. These stories serve both as cautionary tales and as records of the Bodinga's dark past, ensuring that the experiences of those who suffered within its walls continue to be remembered. Despite its eerie reputation, Rock Island Prison continues to draw historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious visitors. Many leave with vivid memories of shadowy figures pacing through hallways, doors moving independently, voices echoing names from the past, and the sensation of unseen hands brushing against their arms. Rock Island Prison is more than an abandoned building. It is a monument to human suffering, a repository of lingering energy, and a place where the past refuses to remain silent. Those who enter are. Some walls never forget. Some presences never truly leave. And some shadows glide eternally through the corridors of history. LaSalle County Jail in Ottawa, Illinois, stands as a formidable structure of brick and steel, a place long associated with confinement, punishment, and the weight of human despair. Though it continues to serve as a correctional facility in some capacities, the older sections of the jail are largely abandoned, and these areas have become the focus of numerous paranormal reports. Visitors and investigators alike speak of ghostly figures pacing empty corridors, lights that flicker inexplicably, and faint whispers that echo conversations from the past. Visitors and investigators alike speak of ghostly figures pacing empty corridors, lights that flicker inexplicably, and faint whispers that echo conversations from the past. The energy within the building is described as heavy and unsettling, and many who enter the older wings leave with a lingering sense of unease, as if the walls themselves remember the suffering they have contained. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at LaSalle County Jail is the appearance of figures moving along the corridors. Witnesses describe dark silhouettes pacing the hallways, sometimes slow and deliberate, at other times moving with sudden urgency. These figures are often described as human in form, though details such as faces or clothing remain obscured, giving them an ethereal quality. Visitors frequently note the uncanny sensation of being watched by these apparitions, as though the spirits of past inmates are aware of their presence and silently observing. In many instances, the figures vanish when approached, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the oppressive stillness of the corridor behind. Paranormal experts suggest that these manifestations are residual energy from prisoners whose lives were spent in isolation and strict discipline, replaying fragments of their existence in an endless loop. Lights flickering without cause are another hallmark of the jailer's supernatural activity. Witnesses report overhead lights and small fixtures dimming, brightening, or switching on and off with no electrical explanation. In some cases, the flickering coincides with other phenomena, such as sudden drops in temperature, the sound of footsteps, or the movement of shadowy figures. Investigators have noted that these occurrences are most pronounced in the older sections of the facility, suggesting a strong correlation between historical activity and residual energy. The unpredictable nature of the lighting adds to the overall sense of unease, making the corridors feel alive, as if the building itself reacts to the presence of intruders or recalls the countless lives it has contained. Phantom whispers are reported frequently by those exploring LaSalle County Jail. Visitors describe hearing fragments of old conversations, sometimes overlapping or repeating in rapid succession. These whispers are often unintelligible at first, but attentive listeners can occasionally discern specific names, complaints, or pleas for mercy. Many witnesses report that the voices seem to come from behind walls or through bars of empty cells, as though the building is replaying echoes of the past. Have captured these whispers, confirming that they are not simply imagined, such as footsteps, cold spots, or light flickering. Cold spots are another characteristic feature of the jailer's paranormal activity. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature in certain areas, often accompanied by an icy draft or the feeling of unseen pressure against the body. These cold pockets are most frequently encountered in the older cell blocks, long abandoned corridors, and near solitary confinement areas. Investigators have noted that temperature readings in these spots can drop several degrees below the ambient environment, sometimes without any discernible natural explanation. The sensation is often accompanied by goosebumps, shivers, or a sense of being watched, heightening the eerie and oppressive atmosphere within the jail. Equipment malfunctions are also common in areas where paranormal activity is reported. EMF meters spike unexpectedly, cameras fail or record distorted images, and audio recorders capture unexplained sounds. These malfunctions often occur in tandem with sightings, whispers, or footsteps, reinforcing perception that the jail is charged with a strong spiritual presence. Investigators note that these occurrences are concentrated near older sections of the building, particularly areas associated with historical incarceration or punishment, suggesting a direct connection between the facility's dark history and the energy that persists within it. Even during daytime visits, subtle signs of the haunting persist. Shadows appear to move independently of light sources. Doors occasionally creak open or shut without cause, and faint echoes can be heard in empty corridors. Visitors often report an uneasy sensation, the feeling that unseen eyes follow their movements. or glimpses of figures at the periphery of vision. These subtle manifestations serve as a constant reminder that LaSalle County Jail is not merely a structure of brick and steel, but a repository of memory, trauma, and lingering spirits. The history of LaSalle County Jail contributes significantly to its reputation. Overcrowding, harsh discipline, and long periods of confinement created an environment of suffering. Those who lived and worked within the jail's walls often left behind more than memories. They left behind energy that continues to manifest in the form of apparitions, whispers, and unexplained phenomena. Visitors often report that the older sections, where the walls have absorbed decades of human experience, are the most active, suggesting that the building itself is a vessel for the echoes of the past. LaSalle County Jail is more than a correctional facility. It is a place where history, memory, and the supernatural converge. Figures pacing empty corridors, flickering lights, phantom whispers, cold spots, and equipment malfunctions all contribute to an atmosphere dense with unexplained energy. Visitors who explore the facility confront the lingering presence of those who once lived, suffered, and perhaps died within its walls. For those who leave, the sensations often linger a subtle but persistent awareness that the jailer's spirits remain, echoing the experiences of a bygone era, and that some places never truly release the souls that have been confined within them. McHenry County Jail in Woodstock, Illinois, is a facility steeped in history and stories of confinement, discipline, and hardship. Built to house a variety of inmates over decades, the jail's older sections have gained a reputation for unusual and unexplained occurrences. Visitors, staff, and former inmates alike report experiences that defy explanation. Shadowy figures appearing in hallways, doors slamming without cause, and cold drafts sweeping through rooms that are otherwise warm. Paranormal experts suggest that the energy of decades of suffering may linger in these corridors, leaving traces of the past that continue to manifest in startling ways. The jail has become a location of both intrigue and unease, drawing those curious about the paranormal, as well as professionals seeking to document these phenomena. Among the most commonly reported experiences at McHenry County Jail are sightings of shadowy figures in hallways and cells. These apparitions are often described as humanoid in shape but indistinct, lacking facial features or clear details, giving them a ghostly, insubstantial quality. Witnesses frequently see them standing silently in the shadows of long corridors or moving slowly from one cell to another. Some describe figures that resemble former inmates, dressed in outdated prison uniforms, pacing or leaning against walls as if trapped in an endless routine. Attempts to approach these figures often result in them disappearing suddenly, leaving only an empty hallway and a lingering sense of unease. Staff members on night shifts sometimes report glimpsing these shapes from the corner of their eyes, only to find the area empty when they turn toward the movement. Doors slamming without cause is another hallmark of the jail's paranormal activity. Reports of cell doors or corridor doors opening or closing violently occur frequently, often accompanied by no discernible drafts or external influence. These events are particularly common in older sections of the jail, where the structure creaks and shifts naturally. Yet witnesses insist that the slamming is far too sudden and forceful to be attributed solely to building movement. Some staff members have described multiple doors slamming in succession, creating a cacophony that reverberates through the hallways. These events are a source of concern for the prison staff, who are struggling to understand the cause of these unexplained events. These occurrences often coincide with other phenomena, such as shadowy figures or sudden temperature drops, suggesting that unseen forces may be actively interacting with the environment. Cold drafts are another persistent feature of McHenry County Jail's haunted reputation. Even in rooms warmed by heaters or sunlight, visitors report sudden pockets of freezing air that move inexplicably through the space. These drafts often appear near older cell blocks, stairwells, or corners of hallways that are historically significant within the facility. Paranormal investigators equipped with thermal cameras have recorded sharp drops in temperature that coincide with eyewitness reports of shadowy figures or slamming doors. Those experiencing these chills often describe a heavy, oppressive feeling, as though the weight of past suffering is condensed into the very air of the building. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena creates an atmosphere that is difficult to ignore or rationalize. The history of McHenry County Jail helps to explain why it might be particularly susceptible to paranormal activity. Over the decades, the facility has housed a diverse population of inmates, many of whom endured harsh conditions, violence, and isolation. Riots, altercations, and suicides have all occurred within the jail's walls, leaving an emotional imprint that some believe continues to affect the present. The repeated exposure to stress, fear, and human suffering may have created residual energy, which manifests today as apparitions, cold drafts, and unexplained movements. Paranormal experts suggest that places with intense emotional history are often sites where energy lingers, and McHenry County Jail fits that description in both its architecture and its reputation. Auditory phenomena are also frequently reported. Visitors and staff recount hearing footsteps echoing through empty hallways, and faint whispers drifting from distant cells, and the occasional sound of doors creaking or slamming in areas where no one is present. Some witnesses describe whispers calling names or issuing pleas for help, reinforcing the impression that the spirits of past inmates are present and attempting to communicate. These auditory experiences often coincide with visual sightings, such as shadowy figures or mist-like shapes moving along corridors, creating a multi-sensory encounter that leaves a lasting impression on those who experience it. Paranormal investigations at the jail have captured a range of unusual activity. Cameras frequently record blurred shapes moving along hallways or appearing inside empty cells. Audio devices pick up unexplained footsteps, whispers, and occasional door slams that do not correspond with known activity. Thermal imaging detects cold spots and sudden temperature fluctuations in areas with a history of paranormal reports. Even seasoned investigators admit to feeling a weight or pressure in certain sections of jail, a tangible presence that seems tied to memories of the building and its past occupants. These findings suggest that McHenry County Jail is more than just a correctional facility. It is a site where the emotional residue of decades of human suffering continues to manifest. Visitors and staff often remark on the oppressive atmosphere in the older sections of the jail. Hallways appear to stretch unnaturally, shadows linger in corners, and the cold spots and sounds create an environment of heightened awareness and unease. Even short visits leave many with a lasting impression, as though the building itself holds a memory of countless lives shaped by confinement and hardship. The persistent paranormal activity serves as both a warning and a reminder that McHenry County Jail is more than just a physical space here. It is a vessel of history, emotion, and energy that continues to resonate. McHenry County Jail in Woodstock stands as a location where the past remains vividly present. Shadowy figures in hallways, doors that slam without cause, and unexplained cold drafts are evidence of a place steeped in history and human emotion. For those who walk its corridors, every sound, movement, and chill is a reminder that the jail holds more than cells and concretia. It holds the echoes of suffering, the remnants of emotion, and the presence of the unexplained, all lingering long after the last inmate has departed. DuPage County Jail, located in Wheaton, Illinois, is a structure steeped in decades of history, confinement, and unrest. Since its establishment in the early 20th century, the facility has housed countless inmates, ranging from those serving short sentences to long-term prisoners enduring harsh conditions. Over the years, the jail became known not only for its strict security measures, but also for a series of violent incidents, escapes, and tragic deaths that occur within its walls. Though the building remains active, many sections are rarely visited. And even in these quieter areas, visitors and staff report experiences that suggest DuPage County Jail is far from lifeless. Shadowy figures, unexplained footsteps, and disembodied voices all point to the lingering presence of past inmates, creating an environment both unnerving and compelling for those who step inside. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves shadowy figures gliding past windows or along hallways. Witnesses often describe dark, indistinct forms that move silently, sometimes stopping to watch before disappearing into the darkness. These figures are rarely fully visible, appearing as silhouettes that vanish when approached. Visitors have recounted glimpsing what seems to be a prisoner pacing in an empty corridor or standing near a barred window, only for the shadow to dissolve when they attempt to get closer. Some believe these figures are tied to specific areas of the jail, perhaps linked to the locations where the inmates once spent the most time or suffered the greatest hardships. The movement of these shadowy presences gives the impression that the jail is not simply a building, but a place where the energy of the past continues to linger, replaying itself for anyone who enters. Echoing footsteps on the stone floors are another hallmark of DuPage County Jail's paranormal activity. Even when corridors are completely empty, visitors report hearing the distinct sound of boots or shoes pacing the hallways, often accompanied by the creak of metal doors or the faint shuffle of movement. One night, a security officer patrolling an unused wing heard rhythmic footsteps behind him, yet when he turned, the corridor was empty. The sound continued for several moments, echoing through the halls, then abruptly stopped as if the presence had vanished entirely. These auditory experiences are often described as chillingly precise, as though Sumania or Somthinga is retracing the steps of a long-forgotten life. Many visitors also report sensing presences watching them from the darkness. In certain areas, particularly older wings or seldom-used cells, there's a palpable feeling of being observed, an invisible awareness that seems to follow as they move through the corridors. Some describe a weight on their shoulders or a sensation of a gaze piercing their back, a presence that vanishes as soon as they turn to confront it. Paranormal investigators have noted that these sensations often accompany other phenomena, such as sudden drops in temperature, flickering lights, or faint whispers, suggesting a strong link between the emotional energy left behind by past inmates and the sensory experiences of the living. Disembodied voices calling names are another chilling aspect of DuPage County Jail's reputation. Visitors frequently report hearing their own names whispered in quiet corridors, often in tones that are urgent or pleading. Some say the voices echo phrases spoken by prisoners long ago, while others simply hear their name repeated, as though someone unseen is trying to draw their attention. One investigator described recording audio in a cell block where no one was present, only to later hear a clear whisper calling out his name on the playback. Such experiences reinforce the perception that the jail is more than a collection of stone and steel. The overall atmosphere within the jail can be overwhelming for those who enter areas with high concentrations of reported activity. Sudden chills, oppressive air, and a persistent feeling of unease are common, particularly in older sections of the facility. Shadows flicker at the edges of vision. Faint sounds resonate through long hallways, and invisible presences seem to move with the visitor. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena creates a deeply immersive experience, one that leaves many feeling both fascinated and unnerved. Paranormal investigations at DuPage County Jail have documented a range of unusual occurrences. Audio recorders pick up whispers, footsteps, and murmurs that cannot be traced to any human source. Thermal imaging often detects pockets of cold air that move unpredictably through hallways. Long-exposure photography occasionally captures semi-transparent forms gliding along corridors or near barred windows. Investigators suggest that the accumulation of fear, despair, and intense emotions over decades of incarceration has left a lasting imprint on the building, manifesting as the ghostly activity experienced by visitors today. Local lore reinforces DuPage County Jail's reputation as a haunted site. Stories of shadowy inmates, echoing footsteps, and whispered names have been passed down among staff and shared with visitors, ensuring that the experiences of past inmates remain part of the jail's legacy. These tales serve both as warnings and as a testament to the lingering presence of those who endure confinement, suffering, and tragedy within its walls. Despite its unsettling reputation, DuPage County Jail continues to attract historians. Many leave with vivid memories of shadowy figures gliding past windows, footsteps echoing along stone floors, the sensation of unseen eyes watching, and disembodied voices calling names from the darkness. DuPage County Jail is more than a functional correctional facility. It is a place where history, emotion, and lingering energy converge, a location where the past refuses to fade, and where the presence of those who suffered continues to be felt long after the gates close. Kane County Jail in Geneva, Illinois, stands as a stark testament to decades of incarceration, punishment, and human suffering. While much of the facility has been modernized or abandoned, the older wings of the jail continue to draw paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and those fascinated by unexplained phenomena. Reports from visitors and research teams describe ghostly apparitions pacing empty cell blocks, the metallic clatter of chains dragging across floors, and faint whispers echoing through long-forgotten corridors. These experiences suggest that the energy of past inmates has not dissipated with time, leaving a lingering presence that pervades the building. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Kane County Jail involves apparitions observed moving through the deserted cell blocks. Witnesses describe figures gliding silently along the hallways, often appearing as shadowy human forms. Some resemble prisoners from decades past, their faces blurred, movements slow and deliberate, as though trapped in an endless loop of confinement. Visitors frequently note a chilling sensation when these figures appear, a feeling of being watched or followed as the apparitions pace past empty cells. When directly approached, the figures vanish without a trace, leaving behind only the echo of their footsteps and a lingering coldness. Paranormal investigators interpret these manifestations as residual inertia, traces of the lives and suffering of those who once endured the jailer's harsh conditions. Chains dragging across the floor are another recurring phenomenon reported by those exploring the facility. The metallic sound is distinct, a clinking and scraping that reverberates through empty hallways, often originating from areas with no apparent source. Some visitors describe hearing the sound of chains moving in unison with the pacing of unseen figures, as though prisoners are bound by invisible restraints that continue to haunt the corridors. Paranormal research teams have captured these sounds on audio equipment, confirming that they occur in locations where no physical cause exists. The metallic clatter is most frequently reported in the older wings, reinforcing the idea that certain areas of the jail are more attuned to lingering energy. Faint whispering is a phenomenon that many describe as both eerie and unsettling. Visitors report hearing soft murmurs, indistinct phrases, or repeated fragments of conversations that once occurred within the jail's walls. These whispers often seem to emanate from long-abandoned wings, traveling unpredictably through corridors, sometimes overlapping with the sound of footsteps or chains. Investigators using specialized audio equipment have captured EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, that appear to be voices of former prisoners, speaking in tones and patterns that cannot be explained by natural means. The whispers are often unintelligible at first. Careful listening sometimes reveals named complaints or expressions of despair, lending an unsettling sense of authenticity to the experiences. The architecture of Kane County Jail contributes significantly to the haunting atmosphere. Bars, heavy doors, and dimly lit passageways enhance the sense of confinement, while peeling paint and worn concrete offer shadows and textures that encourage the mind to perceive movement where there may be none. Yet the consistency of reported experiences across decades and between multiple witnesses suggests that these phenomena are not purely psychological, but connected to the history of suffering endured within the facility. Investigators often report additional anomalies in the jail's abandoned wings. EMF meters spike without explanation, cameras malfunction, and audio recorders capture unexpected sounds. Cameras malfunction, and audio recorders capture unexpected sounds coinciding with apparitions or whispers. Temperature drops occur suddenly, often near old cells or solitary confinement areas, producing icy drafts and goosebumps that accompany the appearance of ghostly figures. Many visitors describe the sensation of unseen presences brushing past them or standing just behind, heightening the sense that the building itself is alive with energy The combination of visual, auditory, and physical phenomena create an atmosphere that is both oppressive and mesmerizing. Even during daylight, subtle signs of haunting persist. Shadows flicker at the edge of vision, doors shift or creak without cause, and faint murmurs echo through empty halls. Visitors frequently report a feeling of being observed, a pervasive sense that unseen eyes follow their every movement. These daytime manifestations reinforce the idea that the energy within Kane County Jail is not dependent on darkness, but is instead a constant presence, anchored to memories of past inmates and the walls that contain them. The history of Kane County Jail adds depth to the paranormal experiences reported today. Overcrowding, harsh discipline, and long periods of isolation created conditions of psychological and physical stress for prisoners. Guards and staff endured their own challenges, creating an environment thick with tension and fear. These intense human experiences, played out over decades, have left traces that continue to manifest in subtle and startling ways. The cell blocks, corridors, and solitary areas serve as a physical memory of those lives, and for those sensitive to paranormal energy, the echoes of the past are palpable. Kane County Jail in Geneva is more than a correctional facility. It is a repository of memory, fear, and lingering energy. Apparitions pacing empty cell blocks, chains dragging across floors, faint whispers, and unexplained equipment anomalies combine to create an environment dense with supernatural activity. Visitors encounter the echoes of past suffering, the shadows of lives confined and observed, and the sense that the building itself is aware of their presence. For those who leave, the experiences often linger, a chilling reminder that within Kane County Jail, the past is never fully let go, and some presences endure long after the doors are locked and the cells abandoned. Will County Jail in Joliet, Illinois, is a sprawling correctional facility with a history marked by confinement, hardship, and tragedy. Over the decades, it has held thousands of inmates, including those accused or convicted of violent crimes. The combination of human suffering, high-stress environments, and historic events has contributed to the facility's reputation as a hotspot for paranormal activity. Visitors, staff, and investigators alike report experiences that defy explanation. Ghostly figures walking silently through corridors, doors opening and closing mysteriously, and muffled screams echoing through empty halls. Some paranormal experts have even claimed to witness full-bodied apparitions of inmates vanishing when approached. Ghostly figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena at Will County Jail. Witnesses describe humanoid forms pacing corridors, standing in shadows, or appearing near cells where tragedies may have occurred. These figures are often indistinct, their features blurred or obscured, lending them a shadowy, ethereal quality. Some observers report seeing inmates dressed in uniforms from decades past, moving in slow, deliberate patterns as though trapped in a moment frozen in time. Many of these apparitions vanish when approached, leaving only the echo of footsteps or the unsettling impression that the jail is watching. Staff working night shifts often recount fleeting glimpses of these figures, sometimes from the corner of their eyes, only to find the halls empty when they turn to investigate. Doors moving on their own is another common occurrence. Doors to cells or corridors are reported to open or close suddenly, often with a force that cannot be attributed to wind, drafts, or mechanical failure. These phenomena are particularly frequent in older sections of the facility, where the architecture is creaking and settling would normally explain some movement. Yet witnesses insist that the doors swing with intent and timing that feels deliberate. In some cases, multiple doors have been reported slamming in sequence, accompanied by unexplained cold drafts or the faint sound of footsteps, creating a sense of chaos and tension even when the jail is empty. These mysterious door movements often coincide with sightings of shadowy figures, suggesting an interaction between physical objects and unseen presences. Muffled screams are a particularly chilling aspect of the reported activity at Will County Jail. Visitors and staff alike describe hearing the faint cries of inmates echoing through empty hallways, sometimes accompanied by whispers or indistinct murmurs. The screams are often reported near old cells or areas with a history of violence or confinement, and they can appear to come from any direction, amplifying the sense of disorientation. Some witnesses have described these sounds as pleas for help, their emotional weight palpable even when no living person is present. These auditory experiences often occur alongside visual sightings, reinforcing the impression that the past remains vividly present within the facility. Full-bodied apparitions have been observed by some paranormal investigators, adding to the jail's reputation. Unlike shadowy figures, these entities appear as complete, human-like forms, sometimes resembling past inmates or staff members. They may stand silently in hallways, sit in cells, or pace slowly along corridors, often vanishing the moment someone attempts to approach or engage with them. Investigators report a sense of immediacy and presence, as if the apparition is fully aware of the living observer, yet is bound to the location. These encounters are often accompanied by cold spots, feelings of heaviness, or sudden changes in the environment, such as flickering lights or doors moving without cause. The historical context of Will County Jail provides insight into why such activity may occur. Over decades, the facility has seen countless inmates experience isolation, fear, violence, and despair. Riots, suicides, assaults, and sudden deaths have all taken place within its walls, leaving an emotional imprint that some believe continues to affect the present. Paranormal experts suggest that locations with intense emotional histories can retain energy that manifests as residual hauntings or active paranormal phenomena. The combination of suffering, confinement, and death makes Will County Jail a prime candidate for such lingering energy. Paranormal investigations at the jail have documented a wide array of unusual phenomena. Cameras often capture fleeting shapes or misty figures in corridors and cells, while audio equipment picks up unexplained footsteps, whispers, and occasional screams. Thermal imaging sometimes detects sudden cold spots or temperature anomalies that correspond with areas of frequent sightings. Even those who initially approach the site skeptically often leave with a sense of unease, reporting sensations of being watched or followed, or noticing movements in peripheral vision that cannot be explained. These repeated observations support the accounts of staff, visitors, and investigators alike, underscoring the jail's reputation as a site of persistent paranormal activity. Visitors to Will County Jail frequently describe the atmosphere as oppressive, particularly in older sections of the facility. Hallways seem to stretch unnaturally, shadows appear to move independently of light, and cold drafts linger where none should exist. The combination of visual, auditory, and physical phenomena creates a multi-sensory experience that leaves a lasting impression. For those who enter these spaces, the jail is more than a building of cells and concretia. It is a vessel of history, emotion, and lingering energy. Will County Jail in Joliet stands as a stark reminder of the past that continues to resonate in the present. Ghostly figures walking corridors, doors moving mysteriously, muffled screams, and vanishing apparitions all serve as evidence that the facility is more than its physical components. It is a place where the suffering of decades past persists, where the echoes of inmates and staff remain tangible, and where the boundary between the living and the unseen feels impossibly thin. Every shadow, sound, and chill in the air is a reminder that the jail is haunted not merely by legend, but by the weight of history itself. Boone County Jail, located in Belvidere, Illinois, is a building that carries decades of history, confinement, and tragedy within its walls. Established in the 19th century, the facility housed countless inmates, many serving long sentences under harsh and unforgiving conditions. Over the years, the jail became notorious for its strict discipline, violent incidents, and the occasional untimely death of prisoners within its stone corridors. Though time has passed and the building has aged, many who enter the jail report experiences that suggest the place is far from empty. Shadowy figures pacing cell blocks, phantom footsteps echoing through deserted hallways, flickering lights revealing ghostly forms, and distant chains rattling. All contribute to Boone County Jail's reputation as one of the most haunted sites in the region. Involves shadowy figures pacing the cell blocks, moving along corridors, stopping briefly outside cells, or walking slowly as though retracing routines from a bygone era that vanished when approached, who once lived and died in the jail, bound to the very cells they occupied. On several occasions, urban explorers recount watching a figure pacing at the far end of the cell block, only to have it dissolve into darkness when they attempted to get closer. Phantom footsteps echoing through empty hallways are another hallmark of Boone County Jail's haunted reputation. Even in wings that have been long abandoned, visitors report hearing the unmistakable sound of shoes or boots striking the stone floors, sometimes accompanied by the clanging of metal doors. A security officer described walking through a deserted corridor late at night when a series of deliberate footsteps followed him, echoing off the walls with perfect clarity. He turned to confront the source, but the hall remained empty, and the sound continued for several more moments before abruptly stopping. These auditory experiences are often disorienting, giving the impression that Summonia or Somethingha is retracing the steps of those who once occupied the jail. Flickering lights frequently add to the eerie atmosphere. Many visitors report seeing bulbs dim or flash erratically, often revealing shadowy forms that vanish when the lights stabilize. In some cases, lights appear to react to movement, casting brief, distorted shadows that resemble figures walking through the hallways. Paranormal investigators have documented these occurrences, noting that the lights often flicker in areas associated with historic cells, punishment wings, or solitary confinement, suggesting a connection between electrical disturbances and lingering spiritual energy. The visual interplay of flickering light and moving shadows creates an immersive, unsettling experience, leaving many visitors convinced that the jail is not entirely empty. The sound of distant chains rattling is another phenomenon reported within Boone County Jail. Even in areas where no metal restraints remain, some visitors hear the unmistakable clanging of chains dragging across floors or being lifted and dropped. Witnesses often describe the sound as originating from deep within the cell blocks, moving as if prisoners are walking unseen among the walls. One paranormal investigator recounted hearing chains rattle along an abandoned corridor late at night, growing louder as he approached, only to fade away when he reached the source. These auditory experiences are commonly interpreted as residual energy from past punishments, echoing the suffering and confinement endured by inmates over decades. Visitors frequently report a combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena that amplify the jail's unnerving atmosphere. Shadows appear at the edges of vision, doors creak or slam without cause, and cold spots move through otherwise warm areas. Some explorers have described feeling invisible touches, a sense of being followed, or a subtle pressure on their shoulders or back, sensations that vanish when they turn to confront them. The cumulative effect is a deeply immersive environment where the past feels present, and the energy of those who lived and suffered within Boone County Jail continues to make itself known. Paranormal teams investigating the jail have documented a wide range of anomalies. Audio recordings capture footsteps, whispers, and the clanging of chains that cannot be traced to any living source. Thermal imaging frequently detects sudden pockets of cold air, often coinciding with reported sightings of shadowy figures. Long exposure photography occasionally reveals semi-transparent shapes moving along corridors or near barred cells. Experts suggest that the emotional energy of fear, despair, and isolation accumulated over decades has left lasting imprints, manifesting as a ghostly activity experienced today. Local lore has preserved Boone County Jail's reputation as a haunted site. Stories of pacing figures, phantom footsteps, flickering lights, and rattling chains are shared among staff and visitors alike. These tales serve as both warnings and historical reminders, ensuring that the memories of past inmates, their struggles, and their lingering energy continue to be felt by those who enter the building. Despite its unsettling reputation, Boone County Jail continues to attract historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious visitors. Many leave with vivid accounts of shadowy figures pacing cell blocks, footsteps echoing along empty hallways, lights revealing fleeting shapes, and the faint sound of chains rattling in the distance. Boone County Jail is more than a historic building. It is a repository of human emotion, suffering, and energy, a place where the past refuses to fade and where the presence of those who endure confinement continues to linger long after the doors are closed. Winnebago County Jail in Rockford, Illinois, is a formidable structure of concrete and steel, its walls echoing decades of confinement, discipline, and human suffering. While the facility continues to operate in some capacity, many of its older sections have long been abandoned, leaving corridors and cell blocks empty yet charged with a lingering energy. Over the years, the jail has developed a reputation among locals, visitors, and paranormal investigators as a hotspot for unexplained activity. Reports include ghostly apparitions gliding silently along corridors, sudden cold spots that chill visitors to the bone, and shadowy figures standing motionless at the ends of hallways. Those who explore the jail often describe an overwhelming sense of being watched, a presence that seems to follow them, particularly in areas that once held inmates in isolation or punishment. One of the most commonly reported phenomena involves apparitions moving throughout the empty cell blocks and hallways. Witnesses describe shadowy forms gliding across floors, sometimes appearing near open cells or along long, dimly lit corridors. These figures are often humanoid in shape, but lack distinguishable features, giving them a ghostly, ethereal appearance. Some observers report that the apparitions move with a deliberate, almost purposeful pace, retracing steps as if following a routine established in life. When approached, the figures often vanish, leaving an unsettling emptiness in their place and a lingering sensation that they have been watching every movement. Paranormal researchers suggest that these apparitions are likely residual energy from inmates who endured long periods of confinement, trapped in cycles of fear and monotony that continue to imprint upon the structure. Cold spots are another hallmark of Winnebago County Jail as haunting. Visitors frequently report sudden drops in temperature, often in specific locations such as solitary confinement cells or corners of long-abandoned wings. These cold anomalies can occur without warning, sometimes enveloping a single hallway or forming localized pockets of icy air that seem to follow a person as they move. Witnesses describe goosebumps, shivers, and a deep sense of unease accompanying these temperature shifts. Investigators using thermal imaging and digital thermometers have recorded abrupt decreases in ambient temperature in areas where no physical explanation exists, reinforcing the notion that these are manifestations of lingering energy rather than natural drafts. Shadowy figures standing silently at the ends of hallways are another common sight. Visitors often catch glimpses of dark forms lingering in corners near doorways or at the far reaches of cell blocks. These figures are typically motionless, yet the sense of awareness they convey is palpable. Many describe an intense feeling of being observed, even when no one else is present, and report that the presence seems to track them as they move through the hallways. Some witnesses have described the sensation that the shadows are aware of their every step, pausing when they pause, and receding when approached directly. Paranormal investigators often interpret these manifestations as spirits of past inmates or staff, lingering in the areas where they spend the most time, unable or unwilling to leave. Solitary confinement areas are particularly active in terms of paranormal activity. Visitors frequently report amplified feelings of dread and anxiety in these cells, as well as sudden temperature drops, unexplained sounds, and the sensation of invisible hands or pressure on the body. The isolation cells, with their oppressive design and history of long-term confinement, appear to act as focal points for residual energy, creating an environment where even the bravest visitors feel watched and uncomfortable. Many describe hearing faint whispers, shuffling, or distant footsteps echoing through the narrow corridors, further heightening the sense that the building itself remembers and reacts to human presence. Auditory phenomena are commonly reported throughout the jail. Visitors describe faint murmurs, whispers, or voices that seem to echo from empty cells or from areas long abandoned. Occasionally, these sounds take the form of indistinct words or phrases, often repeated in patterns, as if replaying fragments of conversations from the past. Paranormal investigators using audio equipment have captured electronic voice phenomena, EVPs, consistent with these experiences, recording disembodied voices that cannot be explained by natural acoustics or interference. These auditory manifestations, combined with visual sightings and temperature anomalies, contribute to an environment charged with supernatural energy. Even during daylight hours, the haunting presence in Winnebago County Jail persists. Shadows flicker unexpectedly, doors creak or shift without cause, and faint footsteps echo along empty hallways. Visitors often report the sensation of unseen eyes following them, a subtle but persistent awareness that they are not alone. The older cell blocks and abandoned wings, in particular, retain the heaviest concentration of energy, suggesting that the historical experiences of inmates, guards, and staff continue to resonate through time. The history of the jail adds context to its spectral activity. Overcrowding, harsh punishments, and long periods of isolation created an environment of stress, fear, and despair. Many who lived and worked within its walls experienced conditions that left deep psychological and emotional marks. It is these intense experiences, concentrated over decades in confined spaces, that researchers believe have left lingering spiritual imprints, manifesting today as apparitions, cold spots, shadows, and whispering voices. Winnebago County Jail in Rockford is more than a functioning correctional facility. It is a repository of human suffering and lingering presence. Apparitions gliding along corridors, sudden cold anomalies, shadowy figures observing from afar, and whispers echoing through abandoned wings, combine to create a haunting environment unlike any other. Visitors and investigators who explore its hallways confront not only the physical remnants of a penal institution, but the enduring echoes of lives once confined within its walls. For those who leave, the sensation of being watched, the faint whispers, and the cold, lingering touch of unseen hands remain long after they have exited, a chilling reminder that some spirits never truly leave, and some memories remain forever embedded in stone and steel. Kankakee County Jail in Kankakee, Illinois, is a facility with a long and complex history, known not only for its role in housing inmates, but also for a reputation steeped in paranormal activity. Visitors, staff, and paranormal investigators alike have reported unsettling experiences. Shadowy figures pacing empty hallways, doors opening and closing without explanation, and phantom voices repeating the last words of prisoners who once occupied the facility. The jail's older sections, in particular, are said to harbor the echoes of decades of human suffering, leaving a residual energy that continues to manifest in both visual and auditory phenomena. Paranormal teams have documented orbs and mist-like figures on camera, reinforcing the belief that Kankakee County Jail is a place where the past refuses to remain silent. Among the most frequently reported phenomena are shadowy figures appearing in hallways and cell blocks. Witnesses often describe humanoid forms that move slowly and deliberately, sometimes pacing as if trapped in a routine frozen in time. These figures are rarely fully visible, often blur at the edges or shrouded in darkness, giving them a ghostly, insubstantial quality. Some appear to be dressed in outdated prison uniforms, a visual reminder of inmates who once lived and suffered within the facility's walls. Many observers report that the figures vanish when approached, leaving only empty corridors and the faint echo of footsteps. Staff members working late-night shifts frequently recount brief glimpses of these forms, which seem to watch or follow them before dissolving into the shadows. Doors opening and closing without explanation is another common occurrence within the jail. Cell doors and hallway doors have been reported swinging open or shutting violently, often with no discernible cause. These movements are especially noticeable in older wings, where the architecture creaks and shifts, yet the force and timing of the activity suggest an unnatural source. Some visitors have experienced multiple doors slamming in succession, accompanied by unexplained cold drafts or faint murmurs, creating an unnerving environment. The unpredictability of these door movements, combined with other paranormal events, reinforces a sense that unseen forces are present and actively interacting with the surroundings. Auditory phenomena are a significant part of Kankakee County Jail's haunted reputation. Witnesses frequently report hearing phantom voices echoing through empty corridors, sometimes repeating the last words of prisoners who once lived or died in the facility. These voices may call out names, issue pleas for help, or repeat phrases that convey fear, anger, or despair. Often, the sounds appear to originate from specific cells or hallways, intensifying the impression that the voices are tied to past events. Some describe these auditory experiences as chillingly clear, while others hear faint whispers just beyond the edge of comprehension. The voices are accompanied by other phenomena, such as the movement of doors, cold drafts, or shadowy apparitions, creating a multi-sensory experience that is difficult to ignore. Cold spots are another hallmark of the paranormal activity reported at the facility. Even during warm weather, visitors and staff frequently describe sudden pockets of icy air in specific areas, particularly near older cells, stairwells, and corners where previous incidents occurred. Paranormal investigators have documented these temperature drops with thermal cameras, often coinciding with sightings of figures or orbs. Those who encounter these chills frequently report a sense of unease, as though the air itself is heavy with the weight of past suffering. The physical sensation of cold seems to reinforce the visual and auditory elements of the hauntings, creating an immersive experience for anyone walking to the jail at its older wings, suggesting active spiritual presence. Cameras have captured mist-like figures moving along hallways, floating orbs appearing and disappearing in cells, and blurred shapes consistent with eyewitness reports of shadowy figures. Floating orbs appearing and disappearing in cells, and blurred shapes consistent with eyewitness reports of shadowy figures. Whispers and occasional distant shouts. Investigators often describe a heavy, oppressive feeling in the older sections of the jail, a sensation that seems to emanate from the building itself. These findings, combined with first-hand accounts, have solidified the jail's reputation as a site of persistent paranormal activity. The historical context of Kankakee County Jail helps explain the intensity of the reported phenomena. Over decades, the facility has housed a wide range of inmates, many of whom endured isolation, harsh treatment, violence, and fear. Suicides, sudden deaths, and periods of extreme emotional stress have all left their mark, according to paranormal experts, and the resulting residual energy may continue to manifest as shadowy figures, phantom voices, and unexplained environmental changes. The combination of human suffering in confined spaces creates an environment ripe for phenomena that resist conventional explanation. Visitors and staff often report a palpable sense of unease when entering the older sections of the jail. Hallways seem longer than they should be, shadows linger unnaturally, and sounds echo with intensity that feels amplified by the weight of history. Even brief encounters with the shadowy figures, door movements, or whispering voices leave lasting impressions, reinforcing the idea that the building itself retains a memory of past events. The presence of mist-like figures and orbs captured on camera adds a visual confirmation to these experiences, making the haunting reputation difficult to dismiss. Kankakee County Jail in Kankakee is more than a correctional facility. It is a place where decades of human suffering, fear, and emotion continue to resonate. Shadowy figures pacing hallways, doors moving mysteriously, phantom voices repeating last words, and mist-like apparitions all point to a location where the past refuses to remain silent. For visitors, staff, and investigators, every sound, movement, and chill serves as a reminder that the jail holds more than cells and concretia. It holds echoes of lives, lingering spirits, and the unexplained, all persisting long after the last inmate has departed. Jackson County Jail, located in Murfreesboro, Illinois, is a facility whose history is deeply intertwined with crime, punishment, and tragedy. Built decades ago to house the county's most dangerous and desperate offenders. The jail witnessed countless violent crimes, brutal altercations, and executions. Over time, the experiences of inmates, guards, and those who suffer within its walls have left an imprint, one that many claim can still be felt today. Visitors to the jail describe unnerving experiences that suggest the building is far from lifeless. Ghostly inmates pacing empty corridors. Unexplained noises echoing from deserted wings. Sudden cold spots. And even apparitions of guards who patrol areas that no longer exist. These phenomena have earned Jackson County Jail a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in southern Illinois. One of the most commonly reported experiences involves ghostly inmates standing or moving through empty corridors. Visitors often describe seeing dark, indistinct figures that resemble men in prison uniforms, lingering near cells or pacing the hallways. These apparitions are rarely solid or fully visible. They appear as shadowy shapes, sometimes detailed enough to reveal clothing or posture, only to vanish when approached. One visitor recounted standing in a deserted cell block when a figure appeared at the end of the corridor, watching silently. As she stepped closer, the figure faded, leaving only an eerie sense of presence. Many believe that these spectral inmates are connected to the intense suffering and confinement they experienced during their lifetimes, unable to move on and compelled to repeat their actions within the familiar confines of the jail. Unexplained noises are another hallmark of Jackson County Jail's paranormal activity. Even in areas long abandoned or blocked off, visitors report hearing the clanging of metal doors, chains dragging across floors, or muffled voices speaking in indistinct whispers. Footsteps are frequently reported, echoing off stone walls and metal fixtures, often coming from hallways or wings where no one is present. One paranormal investigator described walking through the East Wing late at night when he heard a series of deliberate, heavy footsteps behind him. When he turned, the corridor was empty, yet the sounds continued for several more moments, vanishing only as he approached the far end. Cold spots are a particularly striking aspect of the jail as reported hauntings. Visitors frequently describe sudden drops in temperature so intense that the chill feels almost tangible, seeping into clothing and skin. These cold spots often coincide with areas where the most violent events took place: older cell blocks, punishment wings, or locations where executions were carried out. Some visitors report feeling an invisible pressure alongside the chill, as though unseen hands are pressing against them or attempting to guide them. The combination of physical sensation and emotional weight reinforces the idea that Jackson County Jail is more than an abandoned structure. It is a vessel for the lingering energy of those who suffered, died, or enforced punishment within its walls. Reports of shadowy guards patrolling areas that no longer exist add another layer to the jail's eerie reputation. Witnesses claim to see figures resembling corrections officers moving through hallways or observing cell blocks, often disappearing when approached. These apparitions are said to patrol in patterns consistent with historical guard routines, suggesting that the energy left behind by staff, as well as inmates, contributes to the overall spectral presence. Some visitors describe hearing keys jingling or doors clicking in synchronization with these figures. Even when the areas are structurally inaccessible or removed from the current facility, the atmosphere inside Jackson County Jail is frequently described as oppressive and unsettling. Shadows seem to move at the edge of vision, sudden noises resonate in unexpected places, and a pervasive feeling of being watched hangs heavily in the air. Visitors have reported feeling invisible touches, the sensation of eyes following their every step, or an inexplicable dread that intensifies in older or historically significant areas of the building. These sensory experiences, coupled with visual and auditory phenomena, create an immersive environment that leaves many feeling both fascinated and unnerved. Paranormal investigations have captured a range of anomalies at Jackson County Jail. Audio recordings frequently pick up whispers, muffled voices, and footsteps that cannot be attributed to anyone present. Thermal imaging detects pockets of intense cold, while long-exposure photography sometimes reveals semi-transparent figures moving through corridors or standing near cells. Investigators attribute these phenomena to residual energy accumulated over decades of confinement, fear, and death, energy that refuses to dissipate and continues to interact with the living. Local lore preserves the jail's reputation as a haunted site. Stories of ghostly inmates, shadowy guards, clanging doors, and chilling cold spots are shared among staff, visitors, and residents. These tales act both as warnings and as reminders of the suffering that once occurred within its walls, and the lingering presence that remains. Despite its grim history, Jackson County Jail continues. Many leave with vivid accounts of shadowy figures pacing corridors, footsteps echoing through empty halls, icy chills that feel almost tangible, and apparitions of guards watching from areas that no longer exist. Jackson County Jail is more than a historical structure. It is a repository of human emotion, suffering, and inertia, a place where the presence of those who endured its walls continues, to be felt long after the doors close. Illinois' prisons carry more than the weight of stone and steel. They carry the anguish, fear, and unrest of countless souls. In these 25 haunted facilities, the past refuses to stay buried. Apparitions wander, whispers echo, and shadows move where the living fear to tread. Thank you for joining us as we explored Illinois' haunted